I'm going to call the Board of Selectmen's meeting for November 21st, 2022 to order. Would you please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Public comments and announcements.
Hello, good evening, everybody. Patrick Otten, East Harwich. One query and one comment, if that's okay. So my query is the process, procedure, and steps, but I'm requesting to be put on your agenda for the Select Board to review and vote and to write a letter opposing Eversource's VMP, Vegetation Management Plan, as submitted to MDAR, Massachusetts Department of Agricultural Resources. Specifically, the use of herbicides, pesticides on the row, right-of-ways, above our single-source aquifers supplying our drinking water. Comments are due by December 23rd, and I'm asking that the board take that up as an agenda and write a letter representing Harwich, as many other towns already, seven other towns on the Cape are writing letters as well to MDAR about this issue. So, thank you. That's my query. So if there is a process, procedure, and step to get items on your agenda for review, let me know.
Patrick, please email me.
Okay.
And you have my email. We've talked back and forth several times, and I will get it on the agenda.
Thank you. Okay. And then just sort of a comment, and that is, admittedly, being on the Select Board's not a job or a task that I'm able to do. So you all have a tremendous responsibility and a gift that you're giving us. But it's unfortunate that the tone of dialogue from the chair of this committee leads to the loss of participation of individuals in our community government. And that's unfortunate in my belief. So again, thank you. Okay.
Thank you, Patrick.
Good evening, Cindy Williams, Executive Director of the Harwich Chamber. Well, we have a lot coming up with the holidays. After Thursday, Saturday is an important day for businesses. It is Small Business Saturday. We at the Chamber have partnered with our public safety, and we're doing a fun event that Carolyn has mastered in town, but I am going to copy a touch-a-truck to help bring some people into East Harwich. So this Saturday, 11 to 2 at the Harwich Paint and Decorating Plaza, we will be doing a touch-a-truck with giveaways, and we're also broadcasting live on Frank FM to promote small business in Harwich. Then, dare I say, but next weekend is Christmas in Harwich weekend, December 2nd to the 4th. Is everybody grumbling behind me? Yes, I'm the elf that's bringing all the holiday cheer. So next Friday, December 2nd in Harwich Port starts the stroll with our tree lighting and caroling with the Harwich Elementary Chorus, as well as Santa arriving on a fire truck and the town band. And then Saturday, we have quite a lot happening. The Garden Club at the Community Center, our new holiday market and open house at 204 Sisson, the Advent concert at the First Congregational, and then a new event that we're doing also at 204 Sisson is Judy and Lies. It's a holiday songbook showcase, and tickets are on sale now at the Chamber. You can call me, email, or buy them online. And then our annual Trolley to Christmastown on both Saturday and Sunday. And then the 7 Trees for 7 Villages that we started during COVID when we couldn't do tree lightings in person, we are continuing the tradition, and all 7 villages will have a Christmas tree. So East Harwich, Hinckley's, Harwich Center, Pilgrim Masonic Lodge, Harwich Port, the Chamber. North Harwich is the Alton P. Hall Memorial Square. That is in the corner of Depot and Great Western, Cape Cod Regional Tech, South Harwich Meeting House, and Chase Library. And then finally, Festival of Trees. It is the 5th annual fundraiser for the Family Pantry. Last year, we raised $10,000, and these are trees that are auctioned and donated by businesses and organizations that are members of the Chamber. And I do have a personal goal that Mr. Galvin does know, but we're hoping to raise the bar a little and donate more to the family pantry, so thank you.
Good evening, Emily Mitchell, Town Clerk. This is your first board meeting since our November 8th state election, so I just wanted to take a moment to share a few updates with you all and a few words of thanks. On the update side, we did have just about 7,477 voters total participate in the election. That was between mail-in voting, in-person early voting, and of course on Election Day. That works out to just over 65% of our total registered voter population here in Harwich. Yes, that deserves some appreciation. We would not have been able to do that without the work of 42 different election workers and registrars. We covered 67 hours of in-person early voting here at Town Hall. We did 14 hours of advanced processing, which is where we actually open those early ballots and run them through the voting machines to save a little bit of time on Election Day. And it doesn't even take into account all of the mail-in voting time that election workers devoted beginning the very first week in October. And of course, the 17-hour Election Day itself. So I just owe a tremendous debt of gratitude to those election workers and registrars who worked tirelessly for weeks. So thank you. Some are in fact in this room. So a special thanks to those folks. And I also wanted to extend a thanks to our new Assistant Town Clerk, Jennifer Clark. The town administrator reported that she had been appointed just a few weeks ago. She started full-time in our office during that first week of in-person early voting. So if you could talk about trial by fire, Jen meets the definition, and she did it with grace and energy and passion. So a thanks to her. And my last thanks to the community center, DPW, police, everyone else who makes that day go off without a hitch. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Emily.
Carolyn Carey, Community Center Director, and I did put packets in front of you, but just for the public. We are still doing our Try It, You Might Like It. I'm going to find something everyone likes. In December, on Mondays from 4 to 5 p.m., please stop in and see the town nurse. She'll check your blood pressure, and overall, she's just an amazing person, and everyone should stop in and see her. On December 13th, we have Grab a Bow, ho, ho, ho. All you have to do is stop by the community center. We have a very large box filled with bows. Everyone is a winner. Reach in. There are amazing prizes, although I'm still soliciting for some donations. And that's just happening on that day. On December 20th, we have our Winter Solstice Drum Circle with the Drummer Queens. Free event, 5 p.m. on December 20th. On December 9th, we started a new program last month called Grab a Tea with Me. And each month we bring up a new topic. People just drop in, ask any questions. I invite some colleagues. On December 9th, we are having more of a listening information session about room fees at the community center before we come in front of all of you and have public meetings. This is really to get some information from what the public is thinking, what we're thinking. So if you can stop by, please do. That's December 9th at 11:30. We have a big red mailbox that hosts letters to Santa, and I am told if you get your letter in before the 14th, we are guaranteed a response back. Unbelievable. We have that direct connection. We are doing our mitten tree again this year. The information is since COVID, they do most of it online. So we have the codes that you can scan in and just order right from Amazon and have it sent. But those help all Cape Cod children. And I don't know, the last thing is we are just reminding people that in January there's a whole walking challenge. You walk a mile every day. So get our newsletter. We're up over 600 people getting the community center newsletter. And I thank you for the opportunity to come before you. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else for public comment and announcement? Annual committee presentations?
Mr. Chairman,
Oh, go ahead, Joe.
did you want to read the committee report? And there is one other comment to add to the record.
I'm rushing through it. Committee vacancies, Mary?
I was asleep at the switch. Thank you, Joe. As we've mentioned in a couple of meetings, I'm going to read the committees that have openings, but I encourage people to put their name in for any committee because you never know when an opening is going to happen. Currently, there are vacancies on agriculture, capital outlay, forest, cultural council, energy and climate action, housing, historic district, planning board, real estate and open space, treasure chest, voter information, youth services, and zoning board of appeals. And if you've read the agenda further on, you'll see there's a couple coming up soon, one on golf and one on conservation. So I encourage people to apply. These committees are advisory, and we take that advice seriously. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Joe?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. In your packet and for the benefit of the community, we were made aware through the Monomoy Regional School District that Harwich's own Terry Russell received the Lifetime Achievement Award for his service on the Monomoy Regional School Committee. Great honor, but well earned by Terry. Terry was recognized not only for his service on our regional school committee since its inception, but also his service to the community. I didn't know this, but it's fascinating to know that Terry was in education for 40 years for the town of Barnstable, and the last 30 of those as an administrator. So on behalf of the town, we just wanted to extend our congratulations to those of his colleagues as well for Terry to get the Lifetime Achievement Award from the Mass Association of School Committees.
Great news. Thank you, Joe. Anyone else for public comment and announcement? Committee reports, and we'll start with the Harwich Housing Committee.
Good evening. I just had one change in that report. It said that I said that Elizabeth Harder was on the committee, but she's not yet. There's an appointment process and all that that's going to happen over the next month.
Thank you.
So other than that, that's what it is.
Thank you. We all have the written report. Larry, any comments or questions?
No, thank you, Joe. Only that we discussed this, I think, a month ago, and your comment about being the communication arm, or I think that's always been, at least my and many of us' perception, that you help us interact with the public and be sure we get all the information we can into the other housing. So I'm in full agreement with that. I don't know.
Right. I think the
I'm
problem
not
with
sure
that,
what
all
our
that
next,
is,
I don't know what our next action is actually to make that happen, but we need to be
Yeah.
sure to take short.
so I just saw on the agenda, we're going to affirm the housing advocate tonight, which is really cool. And that person is going to just be, you know, the focal point of all that stuff that's going to happen. But between my committee and the Housing Trust, I mean, he or she is going to be instrumental in
Yeah.
just moving it along, do you know what I mean? And making sure it goes forward, because I can't just go out there and start doing it without some commitment from
No,
everybody.
and it's so critical that we have wide discussion with everyone involved. So
Yeah.
your role is critical.
It was a good meeting, yeah.
Thank you. Don?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Working off what Larry said, Joe's been at some of the trust meetings, and I'm not going to step on what I'm going to say later, but we finally had a meeting with Jen Goldson and laid out a path about engagement and public workshops. So, I mean, it's going to start moving, and it has to move along with the Housing Committee as well as the trust and the Housing Advocate.
Great.
Mary?
No, thanks, Joe. Appreciate that. And I think you're so right. Getting that housing advocate in is really going to put the pieces together. So thanks for
Yep.
being patient.
Julie?
I agree. Getting the housing advocate in place is going to be very helpful, and I appreciate that your committee has sort of been in a weird position in the last couple of years, ever since the creation of the trust. But we do appreciate you sticking with it and watching it evolve, and I think you're going to be a critical part of that communication. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Bylaw Charter Review Committee.
Good evening, everybody. How are you? We did post this meeting tonight because we have our full committee here, and I want to introduce everybody to the membership of the committee, so I'll call our meeting to order. I'd like to introduce Carol Thayer, who's our vice chairman, former finance committee member and chair, Deb Sabenda, who's our clerk, and our resident college professor. Make sure our grammar is all in place properly. Anita Dissett, former town clerk, and Linda Sabula, who's also former finance committee and former selectman. So a lot of good heads over there. You have our written report. We have continued to meet and review various aspects of the charter. We have talked a couple of times to Mr. Powers about some timelines and a few of the other concerns that he has had. We've talked to Capital Outlay about interpretations of the charter and what have you, and we've also met with the Finance Committee to talk about some of the things that they're concerned about. So if you have any questions, comments, concerns, you can take them.
Thank you. Julie?
No, I thank you. I know you've been working closely with town administrator and to move forward on the analysis and the 5-year report, so thanks.
Mary?
No questions. It is a pretty austere group as I look at the members of your team, and
About 150 years of combined experience in town government over there, so. That's just Carol, right? Thank you, Dana. Ow.
That was uncalled for.
Yeah, she's our senior citizen.
I look forward to seeing what you come up with the consultant that we approved the money at the last town meeting.
You know, we're
So I
waiting to
think-
hear what your plans are and what you expect from it. So that's another discussion for another day, I presume.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Don?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not sure I would have said austere as much as august, but
Not very austere.
Yeah, I didn't mean
I'm not sure about
austere.
that either, but august. In any event, so it's a lot of hard work. I mean, for some people, it's like reading the dictionary, but it's really important. It's the constitution of the town, and it informs how we do everything, so do good work.
Larry?
No, thank you. Good report. We look forward to continuing the discussion.
Thank you. Thank you for your time. Meeting's adjourned.
Thank you. Okay, I think we're on to consent agenda.
Mr. Chair, I move that we vote to accept the resignation of Ernest Crabtree from the Conservation Commission effective December 1st, 2022, and that we move to accept the vote to accept the resignation of Clem Smith from the Golf Committee effective immediately, and that we vote to approve the draft Board of Selectmen meeting minutes for November 7th, 2022.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
No, just special thanks to Ernie for his service on the Conservation Commission. I think he had 7 years, and that's sometimes can be a tough committee. And of course, Clem Smith in Golf Committee.
Don? What's that? Mary?
I'm all set.
Julie?
No, I would just echo what Larry said in terms of thanking them for their service, and also that, you know, some things have become difficult in different committees, and I just wanted to be clear that we as a board appreciate the efforts of people serving on committees. It's important for them to feel that they're serving a purpose, because they are. So that's it.
Thank you, Julie. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 5-0. Open the public hearing.
It's to continue, isn't it?
We are, it was a continuance, but we are reopening tonight, and then I think we will be continuing again.
Okay. I'll read the notification for the continuance from a prior meeting. Harwich Board of Selectmen will hold a public hearing under Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 138, on Monday, November 21st, 2022, no earlier than 6 p.m. in the Don B. Griffin Room, located in Harwich Town Hall, 732 Main Street, Harwich, for the purpose of hearing a progress update from the Chase Escape Cape Cod DBA, the Summer House Cafe, located 126 Route 28, Harwich, regarding the non-use of their current seasonal all-alcohol liquor license. All members of the public having an interest in this topic are cordially invited to attend. Remote participation is also offered. Please see the proposed agenda for dial-in information. It's signed the Harwich Board of Selectmen as the local licensing authority. and it was published in the Cape Cod Chronicle, November 3rd, 2022.
Thank you, Don. Joe, will you just explain the email we received this evening?
Certainly. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So you'll see in your packet after the notice of public hearing that there was a letter sent by me on your behalf to Attorney Michael A. Satterwhite, Esquire. Attorney Satterwhite made the town aware that he was retained by the applicant to be their counsel. This evening, around 5:20 p.m., the town, me as administrator, and I believe some of the board members may be copied on it, but you may not have seen it yet. We were made aware that there's newer counsel replacing Attorney Satterwhite, and that counsel is unable to participate this evening due to illness and family, and is requesting a continuance for those reasons.
So I would take a motion to close the public hearing, and then we'll, would you want to do the continuance in the public hearing?
Correct. I would urge you to take a motion to continue to a time and date to be determined later.
Can I get that motion?
Yeah, so moved.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded, and we will get back to everyone at our next meeting with the date of the continuance. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 5-0.
Thank you.
And now, motion to close? Or is that all set?
No, you're all set. It's been continued to a later date.
Thank you, Joe. Joe, I'll let you introduce the next two topics before we go to a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And, well, as you heard from committee reports and discussion, there couldn't be a better time, and I am thrilled to announce not one, but two appointments this evening, two very critical positions. One, as the board knows, is a newer position, that being the position of housing advocate, and one being a long-standing position of critical importance to our town, and that is the Director of Planning and Community Development. So as you'll see with the memos in your packet, I have appointed Brianna Nickerson as our housing advocate. I would ask the board to affirm the appointment. I would tell you that Ms. Nickerson comes to us with a strong background in housing advocacy, both for Housing Assistance Corporation and prior to that in the private sector for a local bank, helping folks navigate not only the mortgage process, but unfortunately, the foreclosure process. In addition to that, Ms. Nickerson's own personal narrative is something that really resonated with me. And she's authorized me to be able to share it, but generally speaking, were it not for a family member moving out of their home on Cape Cod, she and her fiance and two children live with her parents, and if they weren't able to get this other family home, they were staring at the prospect of having to move off Cape. And both of them presently live and work on the Cape. Their children go to school here in Harwich, and so she gets it. She gets it by virtue of her professional background, her academic background, but also as somebody who can speak to really what I'm looking for in an advocate, and that is someone to be passionate about what we need to do to move the needle. You heard the chair of the Housing Committee. You've got two members of the trustees of the Housing Trust. We have a lot of great committees in place, and now we have a great resource to help all of us move that process forward. Mr. Halkiotis, Paul, is a very seasoned, is the way I'll say it, for those of us of a certain age, has a very strong background as a planner, and in fact has had the title of Director of Planning and Community Development. He is literally an award-winning town planner, and he is someone that's looking to come to Cape Cod for the latter half of his career, if I say it that way, and is looking to impact upon all the things we need a planner to do. He has extensive background in comprehensive plans. He has a background on obviously industrial and commercial, where we're struggling with some of that, and he can help us with any of the bylaws that we're contemplating, and is certified in his profession and has been for a number of years. So despite the monotone nature of my voice that I hear, I want to say that I'm incredibly excited by these appointments and would urge the board to affirm both of them, and we will keep moving and making progress.
Thank you. Can I get a motion on the first one? Go ahead, Don.
I have a question directed to Joe. The housing advocate isn't a department head, correct?
They are a department head, that they're a
Or are you
single-
counting it as one?
single-person department, similar to the Director of Cultural Affairs. I bring that position up because they're both under personnel bylaws. They both appear in the management schedule in the personnel bylaws. And I would consider this person to be a department head, which is a subject matter expert who is responsible for the program, but also budgeting and anything else that goes with that.
I think you know why I asked. I just wanted to make sure that everybody else understood that we affirm department heads, but Joe has the absolute right to appoint appointments under that, and they can be overturned in a period of time, 2 weeks, I believe, for a 4/5 vote of the Board of Selectmen. But we don't affirm those. We affirm department heads. I move that we affirm both. Can we do them both together, or do you want to do them sequentially?
I think there's value in doing them each for their own.
Okay, well, I moved that we affirm the appointment of Brianna Nickerson as the Harwich Housing Advocate.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 5-0.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're going to ask me to pronounce Paul's name, aren't you?
Paul Halkiotis.
What he said. I move that we appoint him to be the Director of Planning and Community Development.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 5-0. Joe, vote to...
Michael?
Go ahead.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
We now have all the department heads filled.
So we have 5 very strong candidates for town engineer. So that's the next hurdle, but there's been some fantastic responses on that. Megan will be doing the first round of interviews. I'll follow up on the second round. Those will be ongoing this week and next week. And then when we have an engineer on board, that person will partner with administration to help us find a surveyor. So those would be all of the open positions at a management level as far as engineer goes. But thank you, and I will tell you that Ms. Nickerson is scheduled to start the week of December 5th, and Mr. Halkiotis is scheduled to start December 12th. So we'll get them in before the calendar year ends. And thank you to the board.
I'll learn his name by then.
Excellent. Vote to approve and sign fiscal year 2023 sewer rate relief fund application.
I think you skipped B.
I'm all over the place. Discussion on letter opposing Holtec International proposal for Pilgrim Nuclear Power Station regarding Cape Cod Bay. This was a resident request. If you join us at the microphone. Good evening.
Hi.
Just state your name for the record.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm Diane Turco. I live in Harwich. And I presented this letter to the Board of Selectmen because all across the South Shore and the Cape people, select boards are being presented with this letter. As you know, Holtec International is decommissioning the Pilgrim Nuclear Power Station, and they plan to dump over 1 million gallons of radioactive wastewater into Cape Cod Bay. We've been working for a year now trying to get that stopped, and currently it's illegal for Holtec to dump. According to the Environmental Protection Agency, they don't have a permit, and according to state laws, the Ocean Sanctuaries Act and the Hazardous Materials, Oil and Materials Prevention, Release and Prevention Act. But it's illegal. So we're trying to get more support from towns. Harwich already voted, and every town on the Cape voted to halt Holtec. But they have not taken that off their plan. And in fact, it's cheaper for them to dump and get the fine from the Environmental Protection Agency than to do the right thing. So we need to continue the pressure. So we're looking at Attorney General Maura Healey, Governor-elect, to move on this because the state does have authority to stop this. So we're asking for additional support in this effort from the board.
Just a brief question for me. We did just send a letter? We voted and sent a letter?
The town did. The townspeople did, not the Board of Selectmen. Oh, you did too?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
So we've already done this. And then it's my understanding that Holtec is on hold for a year?
No.
No?
No.
Okay.
At the last NDCAP, the Nuclear Decommissioning Citizens Advisory Panel meeting, they said they're looking at mid-February
Okay.
to dump.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
So this is an addition, this is directly going to the Attorney General's office.
Elaine, do you remember being before us and us sending a letter? There is a copy of it in the packet tonight. So I guess I would defer to the board.
Yeah.
Are you interested in getting a separate letter to send to Maura Healy?
Well,
or-
this is, yes, because this is other towns are doing this also, so we're just trying to be all together on this. Never hurts to send another letter. And we have been asking for months for Holtec to remove that plan. And even Senator Markey has sent a letter, Senator Markey, Senator Warren, Representative Keating, sent a letter to Holtec saying you must abide by the Environmental Protection Agency rules and regulations.
Thank
We'll
you.
go with Holtec.
Don, go ahead.
Cutting to the chase here, I'd be willing to make a motion that we send a letter using the same text that we wrote earlier in the year, but this is directed to the governor's office.
Right. Yes.
Second.
So that is a motion and a second. Comments, Larry? Questions?
Yeah, thank you for that, and I respect your passion, but I'll vote against this. And I have to vote against it because I really, it's a very popular subject and you've done a lot of work on it. My concern is I don't think it's clear who has authority on this yet, so I would probably take exception to that comment. It's being brought to court now. But I look back at the concerns we have with climate change and warming, and figuring and thinking that we need alternatives to oil and solar. We need everything in the grab bag to help reduce our climate factors. And then I was looking today, and I looked the last time when we discussed this, about, the initial permit on that was 500 million gallons per day. The release they're talking about now is 20,000 gallons per day, as you quote, a total of 1 million gallons. But that's after it's been filtered and screened of contaminants. And so I don't think that safety is a concern. I think the political action seems to be more directed towards just stopping all nuclear power. And I read in articles about the new generation of nuclear plants. The micro plants are much safer, much lower volume. And I hate to take that position that we're going to be against, that we're using this as a wedge against nuclear power in general going forward when we have a lot of concerns about, the economy, the warming. And so I respect all you've done, but I can't go with it. And I looked as well, and there's been, problems in the past with emissions, the flow coming out of the plant. But when I look at those, and interesting enough, those have all been warmer than putting out water that's a little bit close to their limit they can deal with temperature rise. And I know you've had a lot of information on it, but I'm sure I'm on the outside looking in, but just personally, I can't do it.
Okay.
And I'm worried about everything else that I'm worried about.
All right. Well, if I could just reply quickly. The state of Massachusetts does have authority because when Holtec purchased Pilgrim from Entergy, they signed an agreement with the Attorney General's office, and in that agreement, they confirmed that they would abide by all state regulations. And we have state regulations, the Ocean Sanctuaries Act and the Oil and Hazardous Materials Prevention and Release Act. They both prohibit dumping commercial waste into waterways. Plus, the Oil Act also specifically says radioactive characteristics. So it's illegal. Attorney Maura Healy has said they can't dump in the bay. The Environmental Protection Agency has said they cannot dump in the bay. They don't have the right permit. So it's not me saying it. I'm just representing what the agencies that are meant to protect us. And secondly, the water that you're talking about, I understand you're talking about the discharge canal, and that was the cooling water that went into the bay, 30 degrees ambient temperature, that killed the marine life. It was horrible. This is the spent fuel pool water that held the highly radioactive spent fuel rods that were leaking, were damaged. That is highly dangerous water. There is tritium, radioactive tritium in there, and that cannot be filtered out. And the International Atomic Energy Agency has recommended the way to keep treated water from the environment is to keep it out of our waterways. So even they're saying, don't be dumping it. The reason Holtec wants to dump it into the bay is because it's the cheapest way to get rid of the water. And the money they're using for decommissioning is not their money. It's ratepayer money that was put in up until 1999 before deregulation. So that's really ratepayer money. Don't you think we should have a little say in that too? But we also have to protect our bay from this corporation that is trying to make a big profit off of decommissioning that plant. So it doesn't have anything to do specifically with nuclear power, except on the big picture, nobody knows what to do with the waste. And that's another story. I'll be back.
Well, I'm not going to debate that now. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. All right, thank you. And if you ever have any questions, let me know. Okay,
Thank you, Larry. Mary?
okay.
Love you dearly, Larry, but totally disagree, so I'm in total support.
Julie?
I fully support it as well, and I think the only question is, and Joe will follow up, is who you want us to direct it to specifically. And such.
Yes, it would be great to direct it to the governor, the attorney general, and I also would recommend Holtec. Let them get a copy of this too.
Okay, because the other letter that was referenced, Duxbury, has the judge's name on it too, doesn't it, Joe?
So there's a reference, there's a Town of Duxbury Office of Select Board and Town Manager letter dated August 9, 2022, where the Town of Duxbury sends it to Seth Schofield, Senior Appellate Counsel.
Yes.
And it's the AG's address. Is that who you want the
Yes,
addressee to be?
yes, he works under her.
Okay.
Yes,
And then,
he's not.
Mr. Chairman, if I
yeah.
could, in the Duxbury letter, in the second paragraph, there's a reference where they write, "We were and are encouraged by your comments in Harwich."
I know it wasn't Harwich, it was Dennis.
Okay, thank
That's,
you.
yes, it was Dennis.
I'm less
Yes,
confused.
yes. She came to Dennis. And also just one other thing too, Holtec, when they bought Pilgrim, before they bought Pilgrim, we were going to meetings, and they said they would listen to the stakeholders and do what we said. That they would come to town with openness and transparency, and we are holding them up to that promise, okay? All right? So, okay.
And just so I'm clear, the motion relayed back to the last letter we sent. That's what we're sending. We're just,
Seemed to cover everything.
January 31st, 2022 is when we sent the letter, and it was addressed to who it may concern, so I'm not sure where it went.
Okay.
So the motion is to
Okay.
send that letter
Good.
to the addressees on the Duxbury letter.
Great.
Clear?
With a different salutary greeting.
And I'll send you Holtec's address.
Thank you, thank you.
Okay.
Any further discussion? Don?
Yeah, I got skipped over there for a second.
Sorry.
Fast move. I disagree with Larry. I don't want to come off as sounding negative about nuclear energy because I think the next generation is probably a necessary mix. But this isn't about starting a nuclear plant or where you would put it relative to a population center. I spent the better part of my adult life hearing people talk about stuff and then 2 years later say, well, we know more now than we knew before. I don't see that there's any kind of level of what we're talking about here that I would be comfortable with because it's not by itself. I mean, it gets added to basically a soup that everybody keeps talking about diluting. I go back far enough, I mean, I'm a dinosaur, but I go back far enough to remember GE pouring PCBs into the Hudson River. These aren't things that dissipate quickly.
Right.
I mean, and I'm not willing, especially since they came into this game knowing that it wasn't going to be to operate a plant, it was going to be to decommission a plant. Right. So they should be doing it in the most sensitive way possible.
Thank you. All in favor? Oh,
Aye.
Julie, hold on.
No, I just, to comment on Don's point is that we just read in the I think it was a Chronicle last week about radioactive material that they turned the truck around from, for dumping and brought it back to Chatham because they had like 5 bags of some radioactive materials. Now we're talking about dropping thousands of those gallons into the bay. It makes no sense to me, so I agree with Don. I mean, we know what we know now, so we should act on it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
4-1, Joe?
Thank you.
All right, now I'm on to the one I read.
Thank you. Thank you.
Vote to approve and sign the fiscal year 2023 sewer rate relief fund application.
Second. Oh, you need a motion first.
Can I get a motion on
Try to
that?
come alive here.
I want to talk to it. I'm not sure I want to motion it.
Okay, you want to talk to it? Do you want Joe to open this, or do you want to
Yeah.
just? Joe?
So this came to the administration department through our superintendent of wastewater and water, as well as the town treasurer. We were made aware of it through the Division of Local Services under the Department of Revenue. What you'll see in the packet is that it was executed by the members of the Water Wastewater Commission. It also requires signature from the selectmen. And essentially what it's talking about is, it is sewer rate relief relative to any projects that are not otherwise funded through state programs. So it is separate from Mass Clean Water Trust, State Revolving Fund. So you can see on the first page there, it gets to Muddy Creek, interconnection and planning for Muddy Creek, Coldbrook, 2 different projects, and it's been, it's recommended by those staff members that the board approve it.
Don?
Mary's the one who had her hand up.
So I get rate relief sounds good to me, but is that what this is doing? Are we somehow applying for money to pay off some of this debt?
So my understanding is that the Department of Revenue has a program available whereby the town can request relief from these particular projects, and then based on the application, they'll determine whether or not we get the relief. I believe the last time the town did this, the relief, I'm gonna use air quotes, was $968. However, $968 is better than nothing. And for what it's worth, I will ensure going forward that appropriate staff makes me aware of this, so it goes to the board first with more information.
But that's the point of it, is it would
That's my
be
understanding,
some
correct.
reduction in cost to us.
Correct.
Okay, I'm good.
Julie?
No, I don't have any questions.
Larry?
No, I think Mary had mine. I was reading it because we put all this in. We have no idea what we're getting out of it, I guess, is where we are.
Don?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It is daunting. I mean, it's like there's a labyrinth of different ways that money is coming into this, like ARPA and the Clean Waters Board, and they ain't making this easy. So it's like we're constantly looking around, and this specifically says that it's ineligible if you got other from the state revolving fund. I just wish they'd get their act together, because they're starting to talk about expanding what it is they're going to sewer. You would think that they'd make it simpler to understand where the aid's going to come from. I mean, these things are one-off memos that keep showing up, but I wasn't aware of this, and the Clean Water Board wasn't ever discussing this. So it's kind of like everybody's in their discrete cubby holes, and they're not talking to each other.
And this is a repeat from last year, what we voted, and to Joe's point, maybe we'll get more than $968.
I'm pulling for 2,000.
Any discussion from anyone in the audience? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I didn't get who made the motion and seconded.
Well, we probably, Don made it, Mary seconded it.
Guys,
I made a
second.
silent motion, as she said. But I'm willing to take responsibility for it.
Thank you.
All right.
We exactly said you were ready to
Discuss-
make a motion.
Discussion, town clerk position appointed versus elected. This was put on tonight for discussion purposes, to start the discussion. Last year in April and May, this was debated fairly heavily. I know at least one other member of the board besides myself wanted to talk about this as a topic, and it was taken off because of the election, and not to bring up what could be a hot topic during election time. One member of the board has still expressed interest, and several members of the public have expressed interest. There's a brief memo in the packet tonight listing 6 towns around us: Brewster, Chatham, Dennis, Eastham, Orleans, and Yarmouth. Out of those 6, 4 are appointed and 2 are elected. So obviously, other towns have taken this up and changed how they've done that. So this is meant for initial discussion, and I'll start with Mary.
Yeah, because I'm the one that was interested in this from the get-go. It just seems that we were blessed by, I don't know how many years in, and Anita has left, but we were blessed to have a person who knew it and knew it inside and out. And I'm not speaking out of turn here, but Emily's done an admirable job, but it was a steep learning curve. And I'm not convinced we want to do that every 3 years. I think that's a position that needs some stability. I was at an event at the library, and Ginny Hewitt introduced me to Jennifer Pickett, who does research. And she said to me that anytime I had a topic that wanted some information, she'd be happy. Guess she used to do a lot of that for Larry Cole. So anyway, great lady. So I asked her to see if she could poke around and see what she could find. She got from the Mass Town Clerks Association, there are currently 189 clerks that were elected, and 135 are appointed, and 27 others were non-specific. Neither she nor I know what that means. And recently, 10 towns switched from elected to appointed. She was not able to really find out much as to why they changed, but that seems to be the drift. I just think that position requires such a depth of knowledge that you do not want a popular vote to decide anybody could do it. I mean, that's us, right? Anybody could be elected to do this job, but I think that job needs some expertise.
Thanks for the confidence.
What's that?
Thanks for the confidence.
Fair statement.
What's that? Fair statement. I don't think we want to risk that with the town clerk. We were fortunate in Anita. I don't know which way the wind will blow in 3 years. So that's my spiel.
Thank you, Mary. Julie?
No, I agree with Mary, and I think, you know, the town clerk position is an important pivotal position. And of course, not only is it, to me, making sure that everything is done fairly, justly, accurately, recording-wise, all of these things, and swearing in, all of these pieces, but the other part it plays in elections, you need consistency, you need somebody who understands all the requirements. So I agree, we certainly don't want to turn over every 3 years. I think it's important, and I think it should be an appointed position.
Thank you, Julie. Don?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I speak for the opposition. Personally, I admired, Anita just took off, her work for many years, but I'm also admiring what Emily's doing. I look at this from a different perspective. We don't appoint the Secretary of State. It's an elected position. I mean, there is no more reason to believe that that's the all-knowing, all-powerful election official than there is at the local level either. I'm more concerned that it's tethered to some populist thought where the people have a connection with that and it's not being manipulated somehow, you know, through us and through a town administrator. And I've seen that through the years, not now, but I've seen that through the years where pressure is brought to bear. If it's a line employee, it's inappropriate. There are things that a clerk does that a clerk needs the authority to be able to do without asking for permission to do it. Because they represent the public in that process. They don't represent us. I may be the only person here who was actually undergone a recount too in the Lower Cape, and I can tell you that I have total faith in the people who've been elected. Normally, it doesn't occur that an entire office evaporates and somebody has to walk into it and reconstruct it. That is not the norm. Normally, there are people there, and they can help acclimate them. And I can tell you what, as opposed to bringing it as a staff employee where that person stays unless they wind up doing something really egregious, if the public doesn't like what they're seeing in the clerk, they'll get another clerk because they have that ability. I mean, you don't have to go through hearings with them and understanding what a grievance process is. The grievance process is the election. If the people don't feel confident in the clerk, they'll get another clerk. So I'm really much more, in full disclosure, I was a big advocate of creating the Water Wastewater Commission for just that reason. I don't want to centralize the authority within the Board of Selectmen as much as making sure that it's in the hands of the public.
Larry?
Well, I'm glad, Don, I'm not the one on the outside this time looking in, so. I do like the stability aspect, and, we're fortunate to have Emily, but I think I feel more secure if I knew she were sitting in that seat now for multiple years going forward, rather than moving on. I guess my question is, just looking at the local towns, the one that have gone to appointed, did they recently move from elected to appointed, do we know, or do we have any background on what the discussion was?
I don't know.
It's pretty much been that way for quite a while.
It's been that way for a long time.
And that's why initial discussion was the key words.
Okay. I have nothing to add to that. I mean, I can see Don's point, but I do like stability aspect, especially in this day and age where we've been fortunate, but you look around the country, it's being contested so much more all the time now. We want to be very secure in that.
Julie?
So just a follow-up to Don's comment. Don, I agree with you in the sense that the public, if they wanted to vote somebody out, they should have the ability. But I have to say, as somebody who's had to do a lot at the town clerk's office, whether, as a private citizen, as a public figure, I think ultimately you're kind of giving the public, the average person out there, even more credit, because we don't even know half of what the town clerk, you and I may know more, but as a private citizen, not involved with the board, if you're not involved with the committee, et cetera, you may not even have a clue other than elections, what the town clerk's responsible for. It's a lot. And Anita served this town so well. Anita was qualified on every level and had so much history of the town and documents, et cetera. And she just was a crazy smart lady, as we talked about earlier tonight with her being involved with their bylaw charter review committee. So I think it's really important to understand what the public doesn't know that the town clerk is responsible for. And that is a huge amount of documentation, not just elections, not just record keeping, and even more, and training and all of that. If every 3 years that person has to run for election, that's a difficult position to put them in. I mean, Anita did it for years, and everybody learned how much Anita knew. I get that. But at the same token, the current political environment is such that, we're dealing with losing people all over the place in terms of jobs and housing. That has to be factored into these rules too. We just hired somebody tonight who was a well-qualified person who shared a personal story with Joe. I have heard that story far too many times of people with professional credentials having to leave the Cape because they can't even afford to live here. So to me, it's an even wider conversation about elections, stability, and all of those factors. But we also have to look at the wider scale of what we also could be losing down the road if people don't have stability and the town doesn't have stability in its employees. I just think it's another part of the conversation.
Thank you, Julie. Don, do you know how many times Anita was run against? I think she's got 30 years.
Early
Was
on.
she ever challenged?
Yeah, early on.
She ran for selectman once, but.
That's not
I
the
remember
same.
that, but not the same, yeah.
So one time that we know of. Okay.
But-
Go ahead, Don.
I hear everything you're saying. I mean, I may be unusual here because it's not just because of here, but I was a registrar and an election worker. I'm fairly conversant with the office. I've worked with Anita and for Anita. All I can say is it's not a fairy tale that I'm fabricating. There was a period of time, and it wasn't with this board, where she was threatened that someone was going to fire her because they didn't like the action she took relative to what the Board of Selectmen had wanted her to do. I really feel very skittish about concentrating that authority, and I also have to wonder whether they're going to wind up being a union employee like a lot of our upper echelon employees, which creates a really difficult situation if you're trying to match up the expectations of the public with what you can, quote, get away with doing in terms of disciplining even for non-feasance, misfeasance. Forget about malfeasance. I mean, I'm assuming nobody's going to come in with really horrible intent, but it's really difficult to manage that kind of an employee. I would just feel a lot more comfortable that every 3 years they get managed, because if they're doing a lousy job, they're going to wind up with somebody different. And I dare say the one person in this conversation that hasn't actually opined here is sitting in the audience, and I think she changed her opinion from the time she had run to the time that she's sitting here, that she thinks that it would be a better construct to be elected. So I'm just laying it out that it's not like, it's much more professional if you do this. I've had experience with other towns and other clerks. I'm not saying that any of them are poorly involved, whether they're appointed or elected, but I do know that the ones that are elected seem to have a greater rooting in the public because they have to. I mean, they gotta run for office.
As mentioned, this has been debated fairly heavily last year during the election. I know on one of the more popular social media sites, they spent a fair amount of time talking about appointed versus elected, and there was a lot of opinions. Don, to some of your concerns, this could be a direct hire of the Board of Selectmen with a 4/5 vote to remove in case of any action. So that's one thought. The stability part of it that Mary and Julie mentioned means a lot to me. We had 3 people run with no clerk's experience whatsoever. Arguably, one of them did because I think she claimed she did. But we had 3 that ran, and we were fortunate enough to get the one that we got because she was dedicated to learning the job to the tune of 18-hour days to get through what was up ahead of her. I'd hate to see 3 years from now a popularity contest and somebody with a better name run for office and somebody that can get more of the 250 people that attend town meeting to vote for them. And stability, I think, is important to this town. And we do have a clerk now that has, and I'm not going to put her on the spot tonight. She got no warning other than the agenda for this meeting because it was an initial discussion. But I'm sure if the board tonight consensus is they want to bring this back, we will give her ample notice to speak. So. And certainly can if she wants tonight, but I'm certainly not asking. But stability, I think, is extremely important, and to Julie's point, with the amount of employees that are leaving the town for better jobs, it's something that we really need to consider.
Just for the record, I would be all in on re-examining the compensation for the purposes of stability, because regardless of which direction it goes, because it was fascinating and also frightening that we could pass a $70 million budget in about 4 minutes. The time that we actually escalated the pay scale for the town clerk by a few $1,000, it wound up taking up a large portion of an hour.
So, can I?
Julie, go ahead.
So that raises a really valid point that I'm actually trying to make, which is that, in the same breath that you say that the public should be able to throw somebody out if they're not doing a good job, that public may not even understand the job. It may decide through it could be the same thing where you said, not this administrator, but in past, a clerk has felt persecuted. Well, that person could be persecuted by the public just because somebody puts on a spin out in the public and blows up something, and then you get all these people running, and to Michael's point, people that may not even be qualified to run. So I think what you say about the inner workings of why it should be elected also feeds to the same part of my story, which is that why it doesn't work sometimes. And I'm just making the point because you're saying that, and I remember that town meeting where it was widely debated, and Anita sat there with one of the most qualified town clerks on the Cape, or really probably in the state, and that was insane. But why was that done? Because 1 or 2 people jumped on it, and then it took from there, and that's unfortunate. And she was there as an elected person, so I think you can go both ways with that argument.
Don.
Bring it back.
We're going to bring it back, but 2 things. The first one is that you could still tie this to the personnel bylaw compensation that people who are in that area get. But I need to clarify what I was saying. I was not saying that it was a town administrator who was impressing undue influence. I was saying it was a member of the Board of Selectmen, 2 members, who came down to her and threatened to fire her as if they could.
Right.
But they could if it was
I hear
if it
you.
was appointed.
But to Michael's point, if you did it through the board, you could have forfeits.
Mary?
it would have to be a majority. The odds of three of us being crazy enough to take on the town clerk.
Wait a minute.
I rest my case.
I just don't see that. That's like a movie on TV. I don't see that.
And yet it happened.
I feel sorry for them going to say that to Anita, too. I can't believe they left the office. Joe, do you wish to comment?
Only if the board wishes me to comment.
I wish you to comment.
Well, I will tell you that I can offer some perspectives. In my 30-plus years in municipal government, I spent 13 of them as a municipal clerk, and equally between elected and then appointed. And I was appointed in two different towns, my hometown and the town that brought me to Cape Cod, the town of Wellfleet. And I've done a fair amount of research on this when I was an elected clerk, and certainly after I became appointed. There are pluses and minuses to everything, as the board has suggested. I can tell you from direct experience that when the position goes from elected to appointed, well, there's both empirical data that I saw and also personal. And the empirical data was that it's viewed to be more professional. I can tell you as a former member of the International Institute of Municipal Clerks Board of Directors that once you get outside of New England for a town meeting, the vast majority of clerks are appointed and are considered to be a highly professional position within any organization, and that's why that association exists. There are rigorous standards for certification. But I can also tell you that when I literally went one day from elected to appointed, someone said to me, "Congratulations, now we have a professional clerk." And I reminded the person that I had been serving as the elected clerk previously, and he said, "Yeah, but now you're professional because you're appointed." And that was that person's absolute belief. Last but not least, I think for the benefit of the incumbent, I would say a few points. First of all, the mechanism by which you would do that, if you were going to do it, is a charter change. And the Attorney General's office has already established a well-thought-out procedure wherein the incumbent must be the one who is appointed. And so this wouldn't be an effort to get rid of the elected clerk. And on the contrary, the Attorney General's office, when they deal with these charter issues, ensures that the elected incumbent remains the appointed clerk for at least a specific period of time, if not until they choose not to be. And then secondly, studies have shown that when you go from elected to appointed, because people view it as a more professional position, the salary goes up. And I will argue as a former clerk, the salary goes up commensurate to where it should be. So we do have a fantastic elected clerk. We did have a fantastic elected clerk previously. An appointed clerk is going to require to be certified and to seek certifications and to retain certification. Having said that, it is a very personal, professional, and political decision, and whichever way the board goes, I can assist you in that effort.
Thank you, Joe. Anyone in the audience wish to speak on this?
You know, I always have an opinion on things. Elizabeth Harder. I just want to say, I think it should stay elected. I think we've proven that the voters are not stupid, and the people that do vote are the ones that pay attention. I think if you look at the fact that we got Emily, it wasn't a popularity contest. Emily explained to people what the job was and what her qualifications were, and people elected her. And she's doing an amazing job. Honestly, 3 days after she took office, I had to go deal with Assembly of Delegates paperwork. Somebody who shall not be named in the office had no idea what to do. Emily knew exactly what to do. And it worked swimmingly. It was one of the best elections we've had. We got the election results earlier than we have in the past for a local election. And I just think it's almost insulting to the voters to say they don't get what the job is, so they don't understand enough to hire a professional. And I think they do understand it. Sometimes that's why we get low turnout, because it's the people who understand the vote. But that, to me, is what keeps it from being a popularity contestant. And I know, Mary, you're always optimistic, but even in my time in Harwich, there have been board makeups that, no, they should not have been in charge of appointing somebody who part of the job is to oversee any problems that arise with the select board. So if they're going to be not a watchdog over you, but if they're going to be responsible to you for their job, that creates a big conflict of interest for me. So I vote for keeping it elected. I think the town voters know enough to do a really good job. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
We're going to bring it back.
For the consent of the board, we'll bring it back.
Yes, please.
So I got 2 yeses over here. Mary Julie,
What's that?
bring it back.
Yes, yes.
Mr. DeCosta.
I'll just make a couple comments. I have no position one way or another. I do
I
like
said
the.
your name, but will you say it for the record?
Yes, Dana DeCosta, Chatham Road.
Thank you.
I know that when I watched the show in 1985, the assessors were elected, town clerk, treasurer, collector of taxes was elected, highway surveyor was elected, the tree warden was elected, Parks and Rec Commission were elected, the cemetery commissioners were elected, the housing authority members were elected, in addition to all the elected boards that we have now. We have transitioned from elected to appointed before. We can probably do it again. I know that the safeguards can be built into the charter when you make the charter change to keep Don's concerns at bay. You could make it even so that the moderator was a 5th person needed to, get rid of an existing town clerk or something like that. But anything that would help keep this town clerk in the job, I would appreciate and support. But I do think you should go to and find out when and why some of the towns recently have changed and what their motives were. That might help you come to a better decision. But certainly I encourage the board to explore it and look at it. It's a worthwhile endeavor.
Thank you.
And it wasn't Dana either.
Sandy Hall. Dana makes an interesting point, but I've had occasion over the past many years to go through town reports dating back to the Stone Age. And one of the things I noticed in going over them through the years is that the more elected positions you have, the higher percentage of voter turnout you have. My mindset in recent years has been more the possibility that we should have more elected rather than fewer, for that reason, because we all complain that nobody's paying attention. But if you have a lot of people running for a lot of different offices, then you have a lot of people out there to vote who have a more vested interest in that office, so they're going to vote for all the other offices. And I can tell you, years ago, Anita had an interest in going appointed, because she didn't like running every 3 years. This I know. I talked her out of it. And over the years, she came to agree that it was better elected. So for whatever that's worth.
Thank you.
Elizabeth Harder again, sorry. But since it's come up twice in this conversation, you may also want to add the position of the town moderator, because in many towns that's elected. And nobody knows who that guy is that stands up in front of the town at town meeting all the time. They know who he is. He's been there forever, but they don't know why he's there. They don't know how he's there. So you might want to put that on the same agenda. Thank you.
Okay.
He's elected.
I was waiting for somebody to say that.
He's elected.
When? He hasn't been elected since I've been
I think he's been in a little longer than Anita.
Yeah.
No, but he,
Last year, I think he was on.
He was elected last year.
Last year, yeah. Years ago in this town, the moderator was elected by the town meeting at town meeting.
Really? Wow.
Pretty sad if you have to walk out and they didn't elect you.
So by consensus, this will come back, and it will probably come back within the next 2 or 3 meetings. All right, follow up on outstanding procurement, and that one is you, Joe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At the last meeting, when the board reviewed the matrix updated by the Assistant Town Administrator, there were 5 items, which you'll see in the memo, that did not have status statements. The memo from the Assistant Town Administrator fills in those gaps.
Thank you. Any questions, Mary?
No, I was the one that asked to fill them in, and that's great. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you.
Julie?
No questions.
Don? Nope. Larry?
Yes, when this was brought up last time, I had 2 questions regarding the library. One was the roof, and the second was the sidewalk in front. And those aren't on yet. Are those because you're going back for, unless I missed them, I didn't see them on the list.
So working backward, the roof requires more appropriation. It's on the fiscal year 2024 capital plan. So that is not on the list because we don't have funding to move forward. With regard to the sidewalk, it was assigned to the Director of Public Works, and he's trying to evaluate if sufficient funds are available. Once we know that, we'll either add it to the list or add it to town meeting.
So right now, there's a chance both of those are waiting to be added to the town meeting.
It's entirely possible. The roof is certain, though.
Okay.
Anyone else? Anyone else? Okay, moving on. Thank you for the update, Joe. Vote to approve request for remote participation from one member of the Harwich Affordable Housing
You're
Trust.
skipping over again.
I can't see. I need new glasses.
You want to borrow mine?
I might have to borrow yours. Selectman Howell on Affordable Housing Trust.
I mean, if it weren't for the fact that I was sitting next to you.
Yeah, I think magnifying glass.
Yeah, I just want to try to be careful, so if it doesn't seem to be as fulfilling as you would like, I'm not going to be talking about what we're contemplating that we haven't voted on. I'm only going to talk to you about what has transpired. We did have, Joe was able to get in contact with Jen Golson of Golson Associates. They did have a Zoom meeting with the trust this past week. She presented us with the timeline that she was going to use to engage both the trust members, and Joe has dutifully sent forward a questionnaire that they had developed for the trust, and they're going to start spiraling out. They're going to work on an action. They have an action plan that they've figured out to get to our action plan. It involves a general town meeting again on the subject, but it was brought up that there's some practical things that have to be tracked also, because we do have the property, the Marcelin property. So rather than waste time by creating an action plan in general and then doubling back and talking about that property, there is going to be a discussion within the discussion about what it is we're going to do and when we're going to do it for the Marcelin property specifically. But we're working off the plan right now. I mean, and Joe, she's going to help me here. She's going to be doubling back again in a month.
Once all the members complete the questionnaire, she'll follow up based on that. She will be coming to Harwich in January in person, where we're going to do a site visit, going around to certain properties, such as the properties adjacent to Pleasant Lake Avenue and a few others, so she can at least understand what's available presently.
And I did give her the 2-cent tour before COVID happened, where she and her then assistant I took to Dennis to see Dennis Commons, Chatham, to see their affordable housing complex by the industrial area, and all the Pine Oaks properties, all the Hesh properties, all the Habitat properties in Harwich, to try to scope out what we had versus what everybody else had. So she will be refreshing her memory when she comes in, and also looking at properties that we have, but we don't have a plan yet to utilize.
Thank you, Don. Questions, Julie?
So is she gonna assist with developing an RFP? Because I thought the last time we talked about housing when they were here, Larry Brophy was here, we talked about at least getting a draft RFP together to deal with the Marceline.
Yeah, that's going to be part of the discussion, except that that still goes through our own procurement people. She doesn't issue an
She's not gonna,
RFP.
that's what I'm asking, so she's not. So I guess.
But she can assist us in creating, as Joe knows, but just to point it out to everyone here, it's too late once you put out a bid to rank people based on what they submitted. You have to come up with the rating elements ahead of time in order for you to get to highly qualified or just qualified, and then get into price. So it's definitely, I mean, that's part of the process of the questionnaires, is to try to get to the point what it is we're looking to do. But it's going to run through the procurement process through Joe's office, because that's what it has to.
So do you have any ETA on us putting out an RFP?
Anything I could say would just be me. It wouldn't be because I don't put together agendas either. We're methodically moving forward. I can assure you that Joe is working to the plan himself, and we're trying to get some stability, because COVID just blew a hole in everything. I mean, it really is critical that we get some public engagement. I think we all on the trust believe that, because if we screw up the first project out of the chute, it's going to be really difficult to do something where we need public support later. So,
Even if we could start small and just start getting, I mean, I feel like we're the, I know we're not the only, but I feel like other towns around us are making some type of progress, and we just keep talking.
I can't get too involved, because we're not, I mean, I'm only one member of the trust, but there's at least two things I know I've discussed with the chair on a smaller, they're two smaller scale things that we're trying, that they exist already, and we're trying to see if we can wrap around what they're doing with what we could help them subsidize into, so that we could get something out of it. But I can't get more specific because it's just me talking.
Larry, question?
A comment to Julie's point, I think, is that we did discuss this a couple weeks ago, and we have as some differences of opinion, because it's important to have public input into what we want to do. My view is that I'd like to see some money spent up front to have some proposals out there for the public to react to. And that's what I'm not seeing happening right now. If we could do the public first and just have an open forum, it's really hard to corral that and have a discussion. So I'd like to start spending money now to start going with an RFP or something to give some ideas in front of people so that they can react to it and shoot it down, improve it. So have a focused discussion, and that's my concern.
Thank you. Don?
Larry, I do agree with you. We're not trying to throw something against the wall to see if it sticks. When we were working on Sisson Road, we actually got to the point of a draft RFP where we talked about giving points for certain things, and it was out there for discussion. It even had some watercolor representations of what we were looking to do. We're not going to blow past that thought and just open up a meeting with no game plan. I mean, we're not going to ask the public to design a bunch of buildings for us.
Thank you, Don, for that. I think my point is I'd like to go ahead and open up some of those funds to get that started earlier rather than later.
Mary?
Yeah, I'm with you, Larry, and I guess with Julie, I thought we were ready to put an RFP out, and it was going to be concurrent with her doing an overall plan. Did I misinterpret that?
No, it's not off in the distance. If you're thinking that, I misspoke. I mean, we're going to be focusing on what it is the work statement is and what we're going to give points for in the upcoming meetings. Because you can't get, I mean,
Okay.
if this were a private business, we'd be sitting here together and say, okay, this is what we want to do, and we can get it out next week. It's got to go through a bid procurement process, and it has to be, we have to rank what it is that we find highly favorable as the first thought, the second thought, and we are planning on that discussion so that we can put one out. I know if Larry were not you, Larry, if Larry Brophy were the only person involved, it would have been out, he would have done it in his kitchen, it would have been out 10 months ago, because he's chomping at the bit himself to get something done. we're just trying to make sure that it fits the procurement regulations and MHP's process so that we get an outcome from it instead of just putting a bid out and finding that we're not getting what we were looking for.
Julie?
Well, so on that note, can't we look at what other towns have done in terms of, RFPs and the rankings they've used? And granted, I'm not trying to not have the public's input. I did attend one of the sessions that you had, talking about what is the town looking for. But to Larry's point is to, get that information, put it out there and have these discussions. And if there are rankings and stuff that we've depended on based on what another town has done, and people don't like it, they can speak to it then. I just hope we can get moving, because we have this housing crisis. We need to start to take action. Like I said earlier, we're losing well-qualified people who you would assume should be able to, have a home, if not an apartment. And it's happening right before our eyes every day. And every day we continue to talk about housing, and it's not to you and the trust, I don't mean that. I know we're all frustrated. But whatever we can do to start taking some action to creep towards, even if it was 4 units, it's more than we have.
I totally agree. And at the time he said it, it sounded like he might have been a loose cannon, but Larry was not speaking for the trust, but we kind of had a discussion, and he went off to Yarmouth to get copies of the RFPs for the 2 projects up on Route 28, which actually are extremely nice-looking projects. Question has to ultimately get down to how it was financed and what we can be allowed to build, say, at Marsline versus in other places. But we've done that. We're heading towards that. And we had a significant, again, Joe, we had a significant discussion about when we were going to be doing an RFP in the last meeting. That we did talk about it.
Joe, anything to add?
Correct. My recollection is the trust asked, or members of the trust asked Ms. Goldson to add the Pleasant Lake Avenue properties in the action plan. And so I took from that there is somewhat of a hiatus on that process. The trust is able to get into the RFP discussion as soon as our meeting on November 28th. That was not my sense, however, of where the trust members wanted to go.
Okay, thank you.
I'd like to put it on the agenda so that we can't be shut down from the discussion. If it turns out that some of the members don't want to proceed at that meeting, that's one thing. But unless it's on the agenda, we can't discuss it at all.
It is on the agenda for Monday.
Okay, so
Anything further? Anyone in the audience? Don, just so you know, my intention is once a month to
I
have this.
gathered that. Yeah.
Just to get the, and I would say this is an opportunity for the liaison to the Housing Committee to start to review that charge to see if there's any of this work that the Housing Committee can do on behalf of the trust.
That liaison appears frequently at our meetings.
Yes, she does.
All right, next up, discussion on committees and the role of the liaison. So I put the liaison policy in the packet.
Mr. Chairman, not to echo your members.
I missed another one?
You did.
Remote participation. I
going
read
every
that
other-
one before, we just didn't do it.
It's going every other.
I'm gonna turn this over to Mary and go home. Remote participation for one member of the Harwich Affordable Housing Trust. So the request has been made, I believe by Larry Brophy, that he be able to remote participate for upwards of 4 months. Discussion, motion, Mary?
I read the procedure for remote participation, which looks fine. But in today's world, and through COVID, where we were able to accomplish so much remotely, I don't know why we don't just get rid of number 6, which says members are allowed to participate remotely up to 3 times per calendar year. If circumstances warrant an extension longer than 3 remote participations per year, the Board of Selectmen must vote to grant such extension. Why do we need to be in the weeds? Why can't the chair decide that? I know the Finance Committee had people that were away, and it ran very well. John Shorey ran a great meeting. I don't remember who was where, but it all worked out. And I'm sure they got approval of the selectmen, but why?
Well,
So I'll take that as an agenda item request with the change
Okay.
that you want
Okay.
for future action to change that policy. Larry?
well, thank you, Mike. That's going to be my point. That's the second discussion. In the meantime, I would move to grant Larry World a remote participation.
Second.
Moved and seconded, Don.
Yeah, speaking of the trust again, he is a wealth of knowledge. He was with the BRA. He was integral into what we did. Everybody had a role in that purchase, and it's extremely helpful. And I would hate to think that the major requirement was that he's in proximity. Otherwise, we don't want to talk to him.
Mary, anything further?
Nope.
Julie? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 5-0.
Thank you.
I'm gonna wait a minute. I'm gonna read this first.
Okay.
Committee role of the liaison, so committees and the role of the liaison. So I put the liaison policy in the packet for us all to read again. Lately, we have had some issues with committees, several committees. We have also had the staff having a very difficult time trying to decipher what they have to give to who and when. They're being bombarded with requests from people on committees, and not just the chair. And my reading of this really is the chair and the liaison is where it starts. But staff is getting absolutely bombarded and not able to keep up with the requests. And it's things, requests for contracts, requests for almost everything, and from a broad group. Not the chair, not the vice chair, but members of the committee. And I think it's incumbent upon us to have a conversation with the chair of each committee, and then the chair of each committee to have a conversation with their committee members outlining the rules. And Don, I would start with you. Am I thinking that I'm wrong in the way I read it?
No, you're not. The only impediment, and it was deliberate, is they don't speak for the Board of Selectmen, and they're not an extra member of the board they're a liaison to. I mean, that was a deliberate move when this changed. However, I don't know why, but there's been a spate of different committees that seem to want to go off the reservation, where members don't talk to their chair, or the chair winds up going and basically living in the staff's that is a resource to them, office all the time, when the committee doesn't know what's going on. It's just been daunting to see how. I know they went through open meeting training, but I almost feel like some of these committees really need some training. I know Mary's come to some of the golf meetings. I mean, they need some training about what you can and can't do and how you need to do it in order to get to where you want to get to legitimately. There's been an awful lot of yeah, and then they run off and they've been doing. I know that Ellen is swamped, and that was not the intention, nor should it be. They're not like the house mother for each committee, and something's got to give with that, because the liaison was never totally designed to babysit them. I assume that we appoint people. They're adults. They're intelligent, and they should go off and be able to do what they want to do, but they have to do it with the right process. I mean, I feel very frustrated myself because, as you know, I'm basically at ground zero on a couple of these things. It's daunting. I mean, because they don't seem to be reflecting, the open meeting law, voting to do things publicly and then posting subcommittees, that kind of thing. And then members seem to want to run off. And I do note that one of the members sent an email after at least 3 occasions where I gave their committee in front of Mary at one point instructions about communications and serial deliberations, and yet this afternoon we see an email that was directed to 15 people, all of the selectmen and everybody on their committee. I mean, and they apparently not speaking their language.
Well, and it extends past that. In the questionnaire for all the committees, in the questionnaire, it asked a question, do you understand your charge? And in one of the committees, which I sent to the interview committee to take up, there were 2023 goals. There was a list of 5 things that had nothing to do with their charge whatsoever. and I guess I'm looking for an answer or direction from the board to create something that outlines, I mean, some of these committees are charter committees, some of these are committees that we've made up. And I would say even the finance committee. It's too chaotic, and it's too chaotic for the staff to keep up with, and we need to address it. Donna, thank you for bringing up the open meeting law, because I think depending on what forum, or for the gentleman that spoke tonight about people running from committees because they're not respected, I don't see anybody on this board that doesn't respect the committees. I, for one, am not a back room person, and I don't make decisions in the back room. I do it at the table. Some people don't like that, but I can tell you I've had countless phone calls from people this week because of one particular forum calling me out for bullying, which is a phrase that came from somebody else, related to the Conservation Commission. Well, they openly violated the open meeting law. We could all argue about deliberating and whether or not being at home on a TV makes a fourth member on an open subject. And though the Attorney General's website points to social media, which some in this room understand that the Board of Selectmen can't respond to some of the nonsense on social media because it could be a quorum of the board present. So we just sit back and take the beating. Which is perfectly fine. But open meeting law violations are happening over and over and over again. And some people, other selectmen, will take and talk to the chair of that committee or the vice chair of that committee and handle it in the back room. I'm not going to do that. The residents of this town have elected us to represent them. And in the end, we should not allow this to go on. And I think tonight has to be the beginning of the ending for all of the nonsense going on with some of these committees. Mary?
I thought I agree with some of what both you and Don had to say. I thought we had talked at a previous meeting about having some type of a policy for committees, kind of going through all the guts of what they should and shouldn't do, and reminding them that they are not to be talking to staff. The chair, and it's pretty clear in the role of the liaison, the chair is supposed to talk to the liaison if they need documents or information, and then the liaison can decide whether or not that's appropriate. Weren't we gonna put something together that then we could publish and give to, and I don't know what that is. Does that have to be in the charter, or can that just be a policy letter?
To be a policy letter.
Yeah.
We discussed that, Marion, and board members as well as staff were going to give ideas
Yeah,
of where they thought it was going wrong. So I'm still waiting for board members.
Okay.
And one staff member has outlined some of the issues that she's having. But in some cases, and Don, I think you could agree because of how involved you were with the golf committee, in some cases this has to start with the liaison and the chair, and then the chair to their committee to let their committees know. And I know in one instance, there was a subcommittee that didn't post meetings, and you know, that is a mistake.
They didn't vote to have it.
Right, and there is mistakes, and we can't expect them to know everything. But at the same token, our staff is taking an absolute beating, and they are tired of it. So I would look for feedback to create a policy, but I would also look to each board member to speak to the committee chairs and remind them that if they have questions on open meeting law, that session was taped, and we can get them any extra answers they need, but to encourage them to speak to everybody in their committee and let them know that the individual request can't be granted. Joe, any add-ons based on our conversations on this and your conversations with staff?
Well, first, thank you, because it has been reaching a tipping point where staff that I'm directing who are actively engaged in ongoing efforts to support the Board of Selectmen and move forward to town meeting 161 days from today.
You'd get that in somewhere.
Yeah, always. And we grind to a halt because we've got a committee member that's not known to staff members as a committee member. And in the recent instances, there was committee members looking to conduct, quote, their own audit. The good news is we have an auditing firm, and we have a finance director who doubles as a town accountant. So we don't need committees auditing nor is that their role. But in that process, that causes staff to stop what they're doing under directive and try to respond because they don't want to come across as unresponsive. Having said that, I appreciate the directive you already have in your liaison policy. I think a further policy or perhaps tightening it would help. But I think to me, the solution's already been identified. The town has a great committee handbook, and the committee handbook has some of these policies in place. If committee chairs know that they can rely upon liaisons, committee members can then know that they can rely upon the chair. And so if it goes from the member to the chair to the liaison, and the liaison are you folks, you to me, I can then diffuse it back to staff in an orderly manner. But I do think the time has come to address it because it is reaching a tipping point, and we're only going to get busier trying to get town meeting accomplished.
Thank you, Joe. Anything further from the board? Don?
Yeah, just a couple of relevant things. First of all, the charter changed a few years ago about the role of the liaison, and this policy predates that by 6 or 7 years. So I'd like to be able to forward that to everybody too, the actual charter language. It's a little more prescriptive. And I totally agree with Joe, but part of the problem that I'm seeing, because I swapped a whole bunch of committees this time around to different committees, is some of them, it seems like there's a misunderstanding about what the role of the chair is. Like it's some sort of super being that controls what gets on the agenda, and if they don't like what their committee's asking them to do, they just simply ignore them. It's creating a tremendous pent-up anxiety, I guess, within certain committees that they're not getting heard because only the chair talks to whomever, and they don't share what that is, and they're not sure about whether their concerns are ever being shared with anyone else, and they're stonewalled about getting things on an agenda, which is not what I would expect, because if they get something on the agenda, they get voted down, then that's how this all works. If they get something on the agenda and the chair doesn't like it, but the rest of the committee wants to do it and it gets voted, then that's how it works. But it's hard to get to that if this isn't all done publicly. And that one group that created a subcommittee, they not only met, they met without posting, they have no minutes, and the parent committee for the subcommittee never voted to establish it. So it was hard to convey to them that when they said, well, we've done all this work and we wanted to propose this, I said, it never happened. It wasn't legal. So anything that came out of that is not, we're not going to discuss it because those meetings never occurred legally.
And the complaint mechanism in your mind, Don, on that, if you get a chair that's not listening, they would report that to their liaison, and ultimately they would go back before the interview committee, correct?
That was the trail that I took with the one committee. I think that's the appropriate one. Because it is not within my purview as a liaison to fire a committee chair. I mean, that discussion has to occur with the interview committee, and if they feel it's egregious enough, to the whole board.
All right, so I'll work through your comments when you send them, staff's comments, but in the meantime, if we could have a conversation with the committee chairs to start this process, it needs to
Yeah, I have a couple
calm
of
down.
committees that are troubling right now, and we've had some discussion, and we'll continue that. It's not so egregious as what we've had before, but it's just too much excitement and going forward without backing up and following all the procedures that they need to.
Right. Don?
Yeah, I neglected to mention this too. It's really difficult to get them entirely understand that one size doesn't fit all. Some committees, we put people on them and we don't have a direct influence on their actions because they're commissions and they're prescriptive because of mass general law about what they do, and we can't supersede them and overturn them. Others are clearly there to recommend actions to the Board of Selectmen to be the action itself. And there's a horrible confusion, it seems to me, about in some of them where they, where the second type of committee feels like, well, we've done all this work and this is what we're telling you you have to do. It's not true. they're advisory. But they're different types of committees, and the commissions that are derivative of state law are a completely different subject. But they still have to operate with the same basic ground rules. And one would presume that if a number of members want to get something on an agenda, that it should be possible.
Well, we all have 8 or less, so if we could start the process. And I know that the letter that we sent to each committee chair asked if they understood their charge. Well, some of the charges I still don't understand, and some of them are old and definitely need to be revisited by the board. And I would say on your committees, if you read them and think that they need to be revisited, I will agenda that, because some, like the Housing Committee, they're looking for direction, and they have no direction. I know that we've made some changes to that, but clearly, based on their report, there's a long way to go.
Golf created its own charge. I mean, it literally contravened the charter.
I got one resident.
And one other thing.
Go ahead, Mary.
I just wanted to add for the public, because you know this, we have to make it clear that the employees do not report to the committees. The employees report to our administrator. The committees advise, and some of them think it's the other way around.
Thank you, Mary. That was an important point. Good evening.
Hi, Michael. Karen Doucette. So I retired a year and a half ago, and I decided to get involved in the town, which I'd never had any exposure to at all. So as a person that's brand new, kind of feels still to committees, there was zero training. It was sit there, sort of listen, go to the meeting. I'm a finance committee, right? So listen, do all the stuff. No clue. I had not even heard of open meeting law. Hadn't heard of many of these things that I've learned about since. So that's just a, kind of like, what the heck? And I've talked to several other people who are brand new to committees. Now, if we had some kind of common high-level training for anybody that's absolutely brand new to a committee, they all have to go through this, and maybe everybody that's on one has to take it, that would be ideal to start. But then there has to be something that's committee-specific, type training, like people were saying. There has to be something more than just join the meetings and you'll catch on eventually. That's nuts. From my perspective. I mean, we get there, but it takes so much longer, and it causes some madness. I just heard there's a committee handbook. Had no idea. Dana's like, I'll send it to you. But again, and I've been in and all over the website because I do a lot of research. I do a lot of stuff, so I'm pretty active, and I still have not come across that because there's a ton of information out on the website. So I think if that's shown to me as a new person on a committee, of course I'm going to look at it, right? Mm-hmm. And that's a simple one. If it exists, just give it to somebody. And then, the communication about roles on a committee, the 3 roles, and then the selection of those and when they have to be voted and how they have to be voted and who, what I mean? All that whole process. Again, I've learned through going through a year, and so at the end of the year, some of us did it as we were supposed to, and other committees that I've observed didn't do it at all. And so these are the things that I'm saying is just as a brand new person, you guys, there's so many people who have been involved in town for years and years, but there are so many of us that want to be involved, but honestly flying blind for a long time. And I think there's a huge opportunity, and as a new person, if you guys start to put something together and want a new person's view, or a relatively new person's view, I'd be happy to help.
Don't go anywhere.
Thank you.
Don't go anywhere. Hold on. Slow down.
Go ahead. Tom.
Yeah, I just want to bring this forward to you because that's true for part of it. But I think you sat through 2 tutorials that I gave to that one committee where I went from all the elemental stuff about what the responsibilities were, how it was structured, who worked for whom, what the open meeting law said, how they have to structure what they're doing. And that did not seem to impress everyone.
Oh, without a doubt, and I could talk about that if you wanted me to, but I think I will hold off on that. But I think Dawn's absolutely correct. Went through gruesome detail. Some people have been in it so long that they don't want it to change, and I think some of the things that have been put forward for us is considered change for some people, because I know it was more Wild Wild West years ago. It just was. We talked about that in the Capitol meeting today. But anyway, so I think as it relates to like open meeting law training, I've asked. I mean, I went to the class. I know there's the presentations online. People need to be specifically asked, or look at attendance. Did they go to the class? If they didn't, we need them to confirm and maybe sign something that says they went through the training, because I know there are people who claim they've gone through the training that I'd bet my house they didn't. So it was a really good training, so it was easy to understand. So if you went through it in one form or another, you'd have a better sense than many people do about open meeting law.
Thank you.
Thanks, Don.
Thank you.
I'm Martha Donovan. I'm a member of the Capital Outlay Committee, and I will admit that I was one of the guilty ones in the beginning who went directly to Joe to ask for something. And I think when Joe nicely explained, if you take the number of committees times the number of people on the committees, then you would understand how many people I have to deal with, right? And it's a lot. And the light went on. I said, yeah, I get it. But I would just make a suggestion for the staff, and maybe you can instruct them. If they shouldn't be taking emails and phone calls from committee members and not a chair or a liaison, then they need to politely push back to people and say, I'd love to answer your question, but I can't unless it comes through the right chain, and this is the chain that it needs to come to. And that'll stop that right away for you guys. And I think that will help in trying to structure this in the way that you want to.
Yes.
Just a thought.
Thank you, and they're just learning that as well. They don't like to tell people, no, I'm not giving that to you, but they are learning the polite way to say that.
Sometimes no is the best answer.
Yeah, I agree. Anything further? Anyone else? We find the right line. I think we're on to golf fees. Discussion and vote to approve recommended 2023 golf fees.
Mr. Chairman, as our Director of Golf comes forward, I just want to set the table, if I could, for the benefit of the board and the general public. As you'll see in Roman's memo, this is an every other year, more or less, occurrence. Pretty straightforward as far as the process. However, this year, the input by the golf committee failed to attain a majority vote. So I directed the golf director to proceed as he sees fit, because as the board knows, setting of the golf fees and rate structure goes into effect in March, and it goes a long way towards the planning that the finance director and I do on revenue. And so this comes before you tonight without the recommendation of the committee, because they could not reach agreement. And Roman is here doing his work as directed.
Thank you. Roman, thank you for your memo. We have your memo, we have the proposed fees, so rather than have you read what we're already reading, I'm going to open it up to questions and then a motion. That way you don't have to go through the entire document. Larry, I will start with you. Any questions on the proposal in front of us?
Not really, because I think your proposal is very straightforward.
Yes, it is.
And I'm a little surprised that it wasn't voted on, because I look at just this past year, the expenses were about $2.2 million, and the revenue was about the same. And you're losing your cushion, and so these modest increases make a lot of sense to me. So I understand your advisory, the committee's advisory to the board, so I think as Joe suggested, I'm in favor of moving ahead with your recommendations. It's well spelled out.
Don?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I mean, just to add a little bit more drama, there was a discussion probably going back 2 or 3 meetings ago with the golf committee about strategically what their policy was trying to advance in the fee structure. I think that's a fair way of characterizing it, right, Roman? And I, for one, would support this year, because it's a little late now to Joe's point, where we have to start publishing rates like soon. The discussion about whether or not our rates induce more people from other towns to come in at the exclusion of some town residents, everything is probably a valid discussion, but I'm not sure that we can have it now. And they came to no conclusion whatsoever. They asked Roman to consider certain things. He went back. He did. He presented it, and we had a resounding 3-3 tie. So, I mean, and it's our shot to call anyway. They're advisory.
Thank you, Don. Mary?
I'm going to open with where Don ended. They're advisory. You're our professional, and I trust you in those numbers, and I fully support them.
Julie?
I don't have any questions. The documentation supports itself, so thank you for that, and I would vote in favor as well.
Can I get a motion?
I move that we approve the rates as outlined by Roman as presented.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Anyone in the audience? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 5-0.
Thank you for the presentation, Ron.
We didn't mean to be so hard on you.
Discussion on Ding. Discussion on revolving funds. We had this topic a few times last year, and we are going to start this year with this first discussion. Selectman Howell asked a question of me, if we could revisit revolving funds, and I said I would bring it to the board. Don?
Well, actually, I'm going to punt and defer to Dana, who made a phone call to me. But he made a lot of sense, and it occurs to me that the exponential growth in these, I mean, it really started as something very small, warrants at least somebody, his pitch was to have one person from the Board of Selectmen and one person from FinCom do some explicit research on where it started, what the level was when that occurred, and how it's grown through the years, and what programs actually have them, to make the determination, because it's pretty scary. It's over $1 million now worth of funds that don't ever get scrutinized in the same manner the town meeting would scrutinize them. And it certainly occurs to me that the golf course was not designed and built for the benefit of just golfers. Likewise, the harbors weren't. I mean, but I keep hearing too many discussions that start with our revolving fund as opposed to the town's revolving fund. And I don't see, and I don't think Dana does either, the need to have quite the magnitude of these things. After a while, you should have them nailed down so that most things should be able to be appropriated, and that the revolving fund is a contingency, not a primary source for anything. But we have gone down a rabbit hole on a number of occasions where people in various committees at the time, that's how they were signing for approvals. They were spending money, and committee members who we appointed, who were just regular citizens, were approving of the actions as the impetus for buying something or getting some construction done. And that really isn't the way we should be doing stuff, unless I understand that there's an unknown in all these areas, but it's just really frustrating that the magnitude of it has gotten to where it is. And Dana, you can pick up on that.
He doesn't have to.
I would love to be able to do a dive.
The ask of the board is if it's okay for Don to start reviewing revolving funds, obviously working through Joe when it relates to employees, and then present back to the board for full discussion and a public discussion. So do we mind if Don works on revolving funds for a presentation to the board at a later date? Mary?
I don't mind, because it never hurts to take a look at things, but I'd just like to point out that we had this discussion, I don't know when, but when we got the audit, and we asked the auditor specifically, are our revolving funds appropriate? Are they too high? And the auditor's take was that we were appropriately using them, and that they were not on the high side. So I don't think we've got a problem, but I never have a problem with people that want to look deeper.
Thank you, Mary. Larry?
Yeah, I'm in favor of looking at them. I do have a problem. It's probably more philosophical than anything, and I've expressed this years. I've been consistent through the years on this, is that to some degree, the revolving funds have come about because they haven't trusted, the Board of Selectmen haven't trusted us to do our job and allocate the funds necessary for the programs. And that's the wrong reason for doing it. There are revolving funds that are have specific purposes that I think we should look at. We have some revolving funds, I bet when we look at them, are in the first category I talked about. They did it because they didn't trust us to fund their activities. And we need to have a look at all those to be sure we're separating the two.
Thank you. Julie, what the ask before us is that Don is requesting to be able to look into the revolving funds and then come back to us and present in a public meeting thoughts, changes, suggestions, whatever. So a more in-depth conversation than we had last year when we had the topic, pre-budget, and as Mary said, after the audit report.
In conjunction with FinCom.
Well, what FinCom allows Dana to do is their business, but I only want to say that it's okay for you to do it, and by no means are we suggesting that this is a working group. This is one
So it has to
selectman
come back to here.
that has to come back to us, and whomever they have help him, they have help him. Mary, you're okay with that?
I'm okay with that.
Julie, you're okay with that? Larry, you're okay with that?
I am.
They don't want to use your name, Dan.
Okay, so we're okay with it.
I just let you know, at our last meeting, we talked about it in the same way you are. And they said that if the selectmen were to appoint someone to look into it, that I could help them. That's,
Yeah, what we're not doing is appointing, we're saying that we're okay if he
yeah,
looks
it was a
into.
consensus of our board as well.
Yep. Joe, you have anything to add to that?
Nope.
Okay. Don's obviously gonna work through where it relates to
That's how I heard it.
staff.
I'd have to, 'cause I don't have those numbers under my mattress.
Can I get a motion on K?
I move we approve the 2023 Alcoholic Beverages Control Commission Seasonal Population Form.
Second.
And we put the number down this year at 35,000.
Yeah.
And that's seasonal, not year-round.
Right.
So,
That was the same as last year, I think.
It is.
Yeah.
Moved in, Mary, you seconded it?
Yes, I did.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any discussion? Don?
Yeah, I'm always fascinated that we're next door to a town of similar demographics and size and year-round population, and they count their summer population as 45,000. And I severely doubt that Dennis is more popular than Harwich in the summertime.
Dana and Karen, the mics will pick you up, so out in the hallway if you're gonna talk. Please, please.
But I know that this is an academic endeavor largely, so I'm willing to go with it.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 5-0, Joe.
Thank you.
Joe, will you just give us the definition of Chapter 7, Section 2, subsection 7-2-7?
Thank you. So as you all know, that comes under town agencies, which is the Harwich name for committees. 727 is the unexcused absence without good cause of a member from 4 or more consecutive meetings of a town agency shall serve to vacate the office. When a vacancy has been created, it shall be filled in accordance with general law and this charter. It is expected that the committee members will attend at least 75% of scheduled meetings. If I could go further, Mr. Chairman, recognizing that the 2 individuals listed on the agenda meet that definition, it's staff's understanding as well as mine that it may never have been utilized, or if it hasn't been utilized in our time. So we just wanted to know, would the board be affirming these or taking any other action?
Don? Oh, Larry?
I was going to say that this has come before Julie and I's interview committee, and we've both been appreciative of the information because these have not only missed a few meetings, have missed a couple years of meetings. And so we're both hope that the action will be affirmative tonight, that we can move on.
Do you want to make the motion?
Well, did Don want to speak first, or? Then I will.
I kind of do. I mean, quite apart from whether I'd vote in favor of that, I do think it should come through us in general, because there's, I don't take it lightly that when you're unappointing somebody, if there is a rationale that we're not familiar of, like a long family illness or something, that's something that I would like to make sure of. But I think it's appropriate, and it came to that point in the early 2000s also, that because we don't remove because we don't like people. We do remove if they're just not functioning. It's nonfeasance. I mean, they're just not showing up.
I move that we confirm the provisions of Chapter 7, Section 2, subsection 7-2-7, relative to Cindy Molly and Paula McGuire, Cindy Molly of Harwich Housing Committee, and Paula McGuire Conservation Commission. They would be removed from the basically, they be removed from the committees for non-attendance,
And a letter be sent to them.
and a letter be sent to them.
Can I get a second?
Second.
I did second.
Okay, second for discussion, Julie.
And just to follow up on that, Ellen tried multiple times in various formats to reach out, and there was no. and-
This was not, this was carefully done.
Right, right, because we both agree, obviously, we would not just remove somebody, so.
Okay, moved and second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 5-0.
Thank you.
Vote to send a warning letter to all licensed establishments that did not attend the mandatory licensing meeting per Harwich Liquor License Regulations, Section 101, Item C.
Second.
Well, that's the topic. I would take a motion, and you can just say so moved.
Following me.
You can say so moved if you want.
Okay, I'll say it, so moved.
So moved.
Yeah.
Second? Okay.
Second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, what does the warning,
Yeah, what does it mean?
what does the warning do? Does that, if they miss 2 years, then what's a warning mean?
On the advice of council, this is the newest regulation that you as the local licensing authority have put in. It is therefore untested, so out of an abundance of caution, the recommendation is to send that letter. They would be expected in the letter to make sure that they become aware of the topics that were covered at that meeting and affirm the same, so they're on board like everybody else. But rather than take a punitive action right now, council thinks it's a better approach, and I, for one, agree, to send the letters.
Don?
Yeah, I agree, but I have to at least put it out there that this is so frustrating. The whole concept of giving a new license for years was, let's give them a shot, give them a chance to exercise the license, and we could always take it away if we needed to. It appears it's kind of like trying to evict a bad tenant. I mean, they almost have to, well, I don't want to say what they'd have to do, but I mean, it's more egregious than us simply saying you're not following the rules, and we just have to be really careful on the way in. You can't teach goodwill.
Thank you, Don. Any other comments? Julie?
So I think, again, not knowing why they missed the meeting, so there's that. But we did talk about this extensively and how important the training was. There's been all this outreach, and, our police chief has put a ton of time into this. So I don't want to cross any legal lines, but I would say that if, other than the letter going out and starting to test those waters, Joe, whatever way we go with that, I also think that in our letter, if legal, we should include something like, if there's ever some issue that brings you in front of us within the next 12 months, that's going to be a degradation on your, on your license because you didn't attain the training. You know what I'm trying to say?
I do.
Yeah, yep.
And we're going to get real angry at you.
And Joe?
No, but you know what I mean? I mean, sort of like that's a black mark against you because you didn't even go to the training, and we talked extensively about that. And again, only if it's legal, but it's important, and we talked extensively about it for the last really year and a half, so.
Including a special meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Joe?
Just to add that the intent of the letter is to give them the opportunity to come into compliance. I will tell you that of the 3 establishments, one of them did make contact the morning of. There claimed to be an illness, which we would never want them to come in. However, they were not prevented from sending someone in their stead. So even in that circumstance, they could have been a workaround. But again, the purpose of this letter this year is to ensure full compliance. And the town would have a much stronger position in future years to say that we've tried that, we're going a different route going forward.
Okay, thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. 5-0.
Mr. Chairman, if I could on this item, I just want to not so much correct what's in the agenda, but just to explain that item N as in Nancy comes before you based on the board's discussion at your last meeting. And so based on the advice of council, it would not be a capital P, public capital H hearing, but rather it would be an opportunity for the licensee to be heard by the board and to hear from the board to explain themselves relative to this seemingly dormant license. And so we would ask through staff that you approve that process and set a date.
Okay, motion?
I move the motion. I move that we vote to hold a public hearing for the non-use of the Class 2 and Class 4 auto license for Peter S. Stagg, 182 Route 137.
Second.
Do we want to put a date on that now?
We can certainly do it at your next meeting on December 5th if the board wants.
Yeah,
You good with that? And that's part of the motion?
12/5/2022.
And that's part of the second?
Yes, it is.
Any discussion?
None.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 5-0.
Thank you.
I get a motion on O.
I move that we vote to approve the 2023 lodging house license renewal, SICE Amp Inc., doing business as the Turn-In, 91 Chase Street.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Yeah, I duped her into giving that motion so I wouldn't have to pronounce it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Can I get a motion on P, and that can be read as one vote, all 7.
I move that we approve the 2023 common victuals license renewals for all 7 of the requests that are listed in our packet.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 5-0. Entertainment licenses I would like to do individually. So motion on 1. And we all have in front of us a memo from Executive Assistants in Licensing, Danielle Freiner, and it spells out any changes requested on the licenses. And they are highlighted. So I would like to get a motion to start on 1.
Okay, I move we approve the entertainment license for 400 East Incorporated at 1421 Orleans Road,
Second.
As presented.
as presented in the agenda.
Second.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded, and just for the public, the only changes in that license, type of entertainment, they added dancing by live performers and amplification. And we
But
have
inside.
changed our forms, and that is inside. We have changed our forms that group some things together, and that's why some of these changes are in there.
And it is inside, so.
And it is inside. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 5-0. Motion on 2.
Move that we approve the Hot Stove Incorporated DBA Hot Stove Saloon at 551 Route 28 on their request.
Second.
Second.
Moved and seconded.
It's indoor again.
Indoor again, also added dancing by live performers, TV, radio, and jukebox. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 5-0. Motion on 3, Beach Light.
Just looking because.
You wanna read it?
Well,
I'll read
Do you
it.
want one of us to read it?
yeah,
then?
I got
I'll,
it.
you got it, Julie?
Yeah, I got it. I move to approve the Beachlight LLC doing business as Still Pub and Cafe, 703 Main Street. And according to our memo, there's no changes to this license from last year.
Second.
And to reiterate that the outside portion is acoustic.
Okay, Don, so the outside portion is acoustic only. Mary, go
I
ahead.
was just gonna fix a typo, because it lists Sunday, 6 PM to 10 PM inside. Isn't that the outside? Acoustic, unamplified, live music, or karaoke?
You're correct, yeah.
We do have a representative from the pub. If you would do the microphone, please.
I think it's just a typo, because it,
Josh Winston from Seal. Yes, I believe that is just a typo in there, so I'm looking there. I believe that's what that says there. We have no changes. The reason ours is so beefed out is because I think we were the first establishment to have the new forms from last year, so that's why it looks longer than the others, but yeah.
Yep.
That's it.
Thank you, Josh.
Oh.
So no changes to the license, and
Joe,
thanks for
Joe.
pointing out. Joe, go ahead.
I just want to make sure I'm reading this right documentation. It is confirmed that 6 a.m. to 12 a.m. inside, 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. inside on the application. Then says inside periodically, acoustic after 1 periodically.
And that is no change, Joe.
There should be no change though from last year, right?
Unless
That's from
you
last
see a
year.
change.
Danielle says inside as well.
Sorry, what I'm trying to evince is, I do not believe that's a typo.
Yeah.
They're based on what the application reads.
Oh.
The application
Oh.
under section 5,
Yeah,
additional
no,
information,
now that I'm, okay.
says inside and inside.
Right.
different
So
boxes.
Sunday is in, so Sunday, 6 a.m. to 12 a.m. inside and 6 p.m. Okay, so I'm sorry, I was reading that as indoor, outdoor, but you're right. There is no typo. And so that's both of those are inside, and it was just in case they wanted to do, you know, a guitar player or something like that in the evening. I don't know. That's just the way the license was written. We never intended to have any kind of live entertainment indoors, even on a Sunday morning, just because we're next to the church.
Right.
That's
I'm
why.
just gonna say,
So
didn't we have that conversation?
that's probably why. Yeah.
So there is no Sunday evening outside?
No.
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
So that's why it was written.
My problem, sorry, Josh.
Okay, moved in second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 5-0, Joe.
Thank you.
Number 4. And there is a change on this one. They are asking over and above to do outside acoustic music. No, this is.
Yeah, this is looking for amplification outside.
Yeah.
And I see no reason why we don't stick with what
Right.
we've done in last year. I think we had a successful run.
Everybody was unamplified.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
It was hard enough to get to that point.
right.
Right.
Okay, can I get a motion to reflect the comments from the board?
Sure.
No, you go, no, go ahead.
Yeah, I move we approve the Embers, known as Embers Pizza, entertainment license with the exception that the outdoor music is unamplified acoustic music.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any discussion?
That it's just so for the record, it's unchanged from what we
That's
had
what I, yeah.
It's unchanged from
Correct.
last
Yeah,
year.
it's the same.
the prior year.
Just give me a minute to read through it. Okay, so the motion is to grant the license that we gave last year.
Correct.
Comments from the public?
Yeah, Bob Nickerson, thanks for going down that road. I just wanted to make sure that the dancing and by live performers also is not included for outside, right? So we're just staying with acoustical but no dancing outside, or is that the plan?
I don't,
So that,
why is that an issue?
I don't think he ever asked for it last
Hang
year.
on one second, Julie?
so I think if, because the other licenses previous, that's a different
That's a
thing
category.
on the application, the dancing by live performance. So that would be restricted
Right.
to inside, just like
That's fine,
everybody else.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
They did a great job last year
Right.
with what you set up. I just want to make sure we go down that same road again.
So to your point, though, we should make sure we say that the.
Well, with that
just-
form now, it seems like you get all that in one. I
Right.
haven't seen the form, but that's what it appears.
It's a check mark, and then, yeah, so I think we just need to make sure that we say it's the same license as last year, and the only difference is that they've included the dancing by live performance, which is on the
Which
application,
is on the
but
application.
inside.
All right, thank you.
And that isn't dancing by patrons.
No, that's by live
Just
performance.
want to point that out.
Right.
Before I go to a vote, anyone else wish to comment on this? And just with all the confusing conversation, they requested jukebox, radio, TV, dancing by live performers, live recorded music, amplification, live bands, and DJ for outside. They are not being granted that. They are being granted that inside but outside is acoustic only with the hours that we gave them last year. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 5-0. I'll take a motion on R, and the three can be done together.
I move that we vote to approve the following 2023 annual auto license renewals. Wayne's Auto Service, 643 Main Street for Class 4 auto repair. Joseph Lang, DBA All Out Performance, 266 Queen Anne Road, Class 4 auto repair. And Stevens Auto Repair, 216 Main Street, Units 7 and 8 for a Class 4 auto repair.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 5-0. Motion on S.
You want to do that?
All together.
Yeah, all together?
Yep.
I move that we approve the following 2023 Mass General Law, Chapter 138, Section 15, Annual Liquor License Renewals, as requested. ATJX Incorporated, DBA Moonshine Liquors, 4 Great Western Road. Malik Corporation doing business as Value Mart, 435 Route 28, and Portside Liquors, 3rd Incorporated, DBA Portside Liquors, 421 Route 39, pending a fire department inspection report.
And one more.
And Cranberry Liquors at Harwich Port LLC, DBA Cranberry Liquors, 555 Route 28.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. The only correction, Don, you said 421 Route 39. I know you meant 1421 Route 39 on 3 Portside.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I borrowed the chair's glasses for a moment there.
Don't do it. Give you a headache, too.
I just have one question.
Julie, go ahead.
So I just noting that in the application for the liability insurance, the commercial liability, looks like we need an updated, looks like it expired 6/29/22. Probably just an oversight, Cranberry.
Cranberry.
Joe, you made note of that?
That was Cranberry Liquors, commercial liability?
Yes.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 5-0. I'd take a motion on T altogether as well.
I'd like to move to approve the following 2023 Mass General Law, Chapter 138, Section 12, Annual Liquor License Renewals. First, 400 East Incorporated, 1421 Orleans Road. Second, Hot Stove Incorporated, doing business as Hot Stove Saloon, 551 Route 28. Third, First Crush Winery, Cape Cod, LLC, DBA First Crush Winery, 527 Main Street. Fourth, Harwich Port Seafarer Incorporated, DBA Harwich Port Seafarers, 86 Sisson Road. 5, Cape Roots Market and Cafe, LLC, DBA Cape Roots Market and Cafe, 557 Route 28, Unit 101. 6, Beachlight LLC, doing business as Seal Pub and Cafe, 703 Main Street. 7, Ember Pizza Incorporated, doing business as Ember, 600 Route 28. 8, Morningstar Restaurant, doing business as Villa Roma, 278 Route 28, pending receipt of a formal request to close the establishment. For a period of time?
Yeah.
Okay. 9th, WFS Restaurant Group Incorporated, DBA Red River Barbecue, 787 Route 28. And 10, BLM Restaurant Group Incorporated, doing business as Lanyard Bar and Grill, 429 Route 28.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 5-0. Take a motion on A under old business.
I move that we approve the Board of Selectmen budget message for fiscal year 2024.
Second.
Any discussion?
On the paragraph 3, I don't have it right in front of me, but where it's listed of a 3-year, I should probably not pull, I think a 3-year revenue report. I'd be more comfortable that it was also in there 3-year, the same was done with basically an income statement or cash flow, which showed income plus revenue for that period of time. So
Joe?
we're tracking more than just revenue, we're tracking also where we're looking past and looking forward for expenses as well.
Where are you? Are you looking at the letter
Budget,
or the?
The budget report,
No, we're,
Yeah, budget message.
the budget message.
Budget message.
Joe, do you see, you have,
It should be, my note I have listed is your section 3. need
See
to-
what he's talking about?
I
I
need
don't
to
have it in
find
front of
that.
me either.
I do. I'm not entirely clear of the point, and I apologize.
The point is
for
that
saying it that way.
you've listed tracking revenues during that period. I would like to see if you could track also expenses, so you have a tracking of basically income statement or cash flow, whatever term you want to use. So we look at both revenues and expenses to get a baseline and a trend line.
Go ahead, Joe.
So, I get that point on expenses. I do know, however, when the chair wrote paragraph 3, I think the pertinent takeaway from that, if I get you, Mr. Chairman, is that you wanted us to look backward 3 years to reevaluate the projected versus the actuals. Meaning 3 years ago, what were we projecting? What did the actual revenue come in at? 2 years ago, et cetera. So we can do a backward look on expenditures, but there wouldn't be that same analysis. It would simply be, these are the expenditures.
Okay.
And that's what I was after on that, was just, and I think we can get anything we want if we ask for it, but for me, it was just seeing what we projected and what we ended up with.
Right.
Plus, number 1 talks about the financial forecast
And that has
of
both.
expenses and revenues for 5 years.
That has both.
So it's in there, I think.
Okay. Okay, I'll take that then.
We should be able to get that.
I want to get that information somewhere.
Yeah, yeah.
Don?
Yeah, and thank you, Mr. Chair, and I do agree, Larry, with all of that, except that Michael's right. I mean, we keep getting assurances every year that we project that so-and-so, so it would be really interesting to make sure that that's true by going back and checking what our assumptions were versus the reality that developed. Because there are certain times when we have budgets presented where it seems to be highly optimistic.
Okay, so moved and seconded. Larry's okay with that being in section 1. Any other comments? Questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 5-0.
Thank you for the work.
You're very welcome.
Yeah.
Motion on B.
I move that we approve the Board of Selectmen goals and objectives for fiscal year 2023.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion? Larry?
I have a couple of quick ones.
Sure.
One is when, in the housing section, and thank you, Joe, by the way, this is a great, Michael, it's a great job putting these together.
I will take none of the credit. It's all the chairman presently.
Okay, Michael, then my question's directed towards you then.
Okay.
In terms of the housing section of that, I think a goal should be to look at zoning issues regarding open space and housing. I think of all the discussions we've had recently on affordable housing, zoning discussion comes up basically as the number 1 issue possibly. And that involves both zoning for housing, more dense where it's appropriate, and also protection of open space, to really look at that issue. And Michael, I'm happy I'm sitting over here so you can't hit me.
No, that's.
But my second wish is on the personnel section at the bottom. I think where that shows up, I have my notes, but not necessarily. I would still like to see a position descriptions written in an organizational chart that reflects those position descriptions.
You've said that before.
Yeah,
I've said that before, but I still think that would be, would add value to how we
I agree.
address our organization, promotions, and discussions we have.
So under housing, I got zoning issues related to housing, and under 4, I have org chart.
Position descriptions related to org chart, yeah, both.
Yeah.
So-
So that was part of the motion to approve these,
Yes.
Yeah.
and part of the second.
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 Yes.
Julie, go ahead.
So the only other part of that too was that, I know I had said about zoning, because any kind of zoning changes that we could get for town meeting, including the ADU bylaw.
Yeah.
We need to look at that and get that
It's a
article.
broad subject, but it's an important subject to add to this.
Right, so I missed that, that it wasn't broken down that way either, so we want to make sure that ADU is addressed as well, so.
But that's, if we just keep it a broad topic,
Yeah, I think
we're pretty clear.
we know that we want to.
Okay.
Right,
All right, so those two changes were part of the motion and second, correct?
yes.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 5-0. And then, discussion on the cost analysis report written by the town administrator for the formal middle school, 204 Sisson Road. Joe, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To you and the board members, thank you for your patience. So you have the, I believe it's 6 pages of content in front of you in the plan. I'm also joined by some of my co-conspirators, as I'll say it, being the Recreation Director and the Director of Cultural Affairs. So the executive summary, if I could, so to speak, of course, now my voice fails. The executive summary would be as follows. The cost analysis that you have in front of you is the result of several months of work between myself, the Cultural Affairs Director, the Rec Director, Facilities Maintenance Manager, predominantly. And I tasked each of them for the Facilities Maintenance Manager to articulate the building costs as he understands them, the expense side of the equation, so to speak, on those items that should come to bear, both capital and otherwise, so that the building could continue to be used as it's presently being used, and that is for municipal government operations as well as supporting cultural affairs programming. The municipal government operation is cultural affairs, it is recreation. What you'll see in the report is a discussion of some of the items that go back to the 2011 report from the Board of Selectmen that are now coming to be impacted upon by the capital plan. The expenses that you'll see there that emanate from the 2011 report is when the town at that time was anticipating the building coming back to the municipality in some use, and there was an articulation of the state of affairs of various parts of the building and equipment within the building. And so this cost analysis talks about what does the town have to repair or enhance or refurbish, I think is a word I used earlier with the Capital Outlay Committee, to ensure that the programming that is envisioned can come to actually pass. What you'll see that is manifested as the bifold wall, which is between what used to be the cafeteria that we're now considering to being a multi-purpose room like we have at the community center, between the multi-purpose room and the auditorium. That bifold wall remains broken as it was in 2011. The bifold wall in the gym was also identified for repairs, but we do not have that in the plan right now because it's not necessary for the potential programming that's there. The sound system and the lighting that's envisioned in the capital plan were envisioned in some of the areas back in 2011. So that's where the cost analysis ties into about refurbishment. You'll also see that there's a discussion of the present utilities and the anticipated utilities in that building with a comparison to a similar building being the community center at 100 Oak Street. And last but by no means least, the revenue potential that is there. So I directed both Kara and Eric to contemplate programming in and around the building, however, not completely in the building. Some of the things I learned relying upon the 2011 report is I can now tell you rather than calling East Wing and West Wing, because I don't know my East and my West. When you look at the building, the original building is known as the classroom wing. And so the classroom wing is understood to be front, right, and rear of the building. The other side, the newer wing, is known as the activity wing, and that's understood to be the front and left of the building where there's programming. I directed them to look at all parts of the activity wing, which would include the courtyard, but to refrain from using the first floor of the classroom wing front, right, and rear, right, and rear, because that would be held out for government use. So that limits them to mostly cultural programming that would occur on the second floor of the classroom wing, front, right, and rear, with the exception of the library. And so I think what you'll see there is, after an investment of a significant amount, 1.9 million and change in 2024 in the capital plan, I feel confident that the staff has identified suitable programming that can bring in significant revenue in the order of close to $250,000. I believe those revenue estimates to be somewhat conservative, but that was the effort.
Thank you. Thank you for the detailed report, Joe and staff. There's a lot of information here. A lot of questions have been answered that have been looming. And Larry, I'll start with you for comments on the report.
I agree, Michael. Thanks for all the information, and thanks for the putting it together. Joe, what percent of this do you foresee as space being taken up by municipal uses? It sounds office space and things you refer to here.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the last part of that, Larry.
Yeah, part of this report, you're taking part of this for municipal uses, office space, I assume. What percent do you see the taking for that?
So I think, if memory serves correctly, what we're talking about is the potential of upwards of 14 classroom units, because there are 14 on the first floor, 14 on the second floor. I'm going to look and see if I get a nod if I'm close. All right, I got pretty close to that. Specifically, I can tell you that again, with more input and discussion with the board, we have the Director of Cultural Affairs there now. The housing advocate was anticipated to be housed over there, as would be the town engineer and the town surveyor.
So maybe, that's okay, Joel. Maybe we can just follow up with specifically who you plan on putting over there, so we can look at that as the overall picture.
So if I could, those are the only ones that I anticipate thus far. So we're looking at roughly, say, 6 of the classroom spaces for the most part. The additional 8, I am aware of some groups that are looking to partner with the Board of Selectmen that may use it for a government and nonprofit use, separate from culture. So I wanted to at least keep that space open for that purpose. If we weren't to go with that, I would release that for programming for cultural affairs. So again, 6 to 8 offices for government operation, the remaining 6 to 8 on the first floor for this other effort that I'm not at liberty to get into details yet, but can at future meetings. The rest would then be for programming for revenue.
Yeah, if I may, I have just a second comment, and that is, I appreciate what was put together. When I read it, it's done a good job of looking basically is internally focused. And I think our discussion, at least my discussion, some others have been overall, is can we broaden that to looking more outside to see are there regional things we should be doing with the center, with other towns, not giving it up? Whether there are opportunities in that light, or are there areas that we haven't explored as much as we should? You know, we've years talked about test kitchen, for instance. But are there programs we could be sharing with other towns that they could do better than we do, and we do something better on our side to be sure we're fully utilizing the building? And so I look at this report as being phase 1. I'd like phase 2 to be that broader look.
Joe, care to comment on that now, or do you want to hold that for our second look?
Well, my only response would be that this report, cost analysis and revenue statement, contemplates the kitchen area to be used precisely as we use it at community center.
So that was just an example.
Yeah, so meaning we, the team, have already discussed the uses of it. So any changes like that, I'd want to go back and update the cost analysis and the revenue statements to just be consistent.
Anything further, Larry?
No, I just want to make that point. I want to be sure we're looking broadly.
Thank you. Don?
Speaking of looking broadly, I'm looking at this from a completely different direction in a certain degree, but some of the pushback that we were hearing had to do with the capital costs to fix portions of the building. And I just want to reiterate to people that, number one, it's an integral anchor to the fact that we have two cultural districts in this town, and that there was a presumed economic value to the town in so doing. And secondly, this is precisely why the Community Preservation Act was passed. Is that you can't get past in communities the need to support public safety, teachers, water, whatever. But nonetheless, the vibrancy of a town really relies on other things, and so they have buckets where they're obligated to spend on recreation, they're obligated to spend, the money on cultural. So I mean, sure, if you're going to be just looking at this as a pure in and out on the basis of the town government itself, and we bond, we fix. But I don't view it that way. I mean, you've got a gym that arguably is a recreational facility. You've got activities that are clearly cultural that would fit in that realm. I mean, if we're going to wind up spending investment capital on this, I want people to recognize that that's why we have a Community Preservation Committee. There are aspects of this that would absolutely be eligible to be funded in that way rather than going out as a town government and doing things.
Thank you, Don. Mary?
I think it's a great plan. It's, there's plenty of detail, but it's also got good summaries, so it was easy to follow, so I think it's terrific. My only question is, looking at the parts where Eric and Kara projected revenues was after some of that, or all of that work was completed. Can any of that revenue be realized before then? Or did you look at it that way?
So I'm trying to send a signal to somebody. I will tell you that I've been informed.
And Eric's hiding.
I've been informed very directly, and I want to demonstrate that I listen and I can recall. The revenue projections offered by staff are predicated on the capital plan being executed in the first year. Meaning, and I'm going to do it, if we refurbish it, they will come.
Well, just some of the items, like, I think Eric noted something that we now pay $100 for 3 hours, but his recommendation is we should go to 50 an hour. And I think Kara had something similar in her write-up. I didn't see any reason why we couldn't do that now. If it looks like we're undercharging, we certainly could make those moves now.
Thank you. Sorry, I didn't take the question that way. You're absolutely right. Administrative and policy decisions from the board can absolutely happen now. And that was a primary point of the director for them to work on, for them to analyze current fee schedules and contemplate changes to them. And if the board's in agreement, we would move it next to the board level to set the fee schedule. So thank you for the clarification. I appreciate that.
Julie?
And one other question, when mechanical work includes the 1.5, but some of the money can be defrayed with the green communities monies, isn't that not?
Sean didn't think so, so we didn't rely upon that. We did the bigger effort, if you will. But to that point, some of the enhancements to the auditorium, as advertised, Ms. Mawini has a background in grant writing, and we are pursuing 2 cultural grants that could offset that. So the number that you see in the capital plan is our conservative worst-case effort without any offsets by grants.
Okay, thank you.
But they are available.
Follow-up, Larry?
Well, just tangentially related to this, we got a letter in our email today about the Community Preservation Act being passed with some $20 million coming to that area. And Joel, do you have any read, when that first came into effect, it was a 1-to-1 match, and then it dropped way down to maybe 30% match, 25% match. The state matched to our CPA funds. Is there a guess that will raise us back up to where we started when this first came into effect?
So I actually haven't seen the email that you're talking about, so I'd have to educate myself on that.
I'd be interested to find out, because that's a lot of money, $20 million going to that fund. That may bring us back to where we were, I'm hoping. Because Don, as everyone says, we could use that.
That was the Community Development Partnership it came from, and Economic Development Bill H. 5374.
5374.
Yeah,
And
and there's
you
a
read
lot of
down
money.
that, there's like item 4, I think it is, it's $20 million to
Yes.
Community Preservation Act. So I read that with happiness that that might match our fund, our, raise our matches to, where at one time it was 1-to-1, state versus what we got locally, so. Maybe you can find out what they.
So I knew I got the email. I haven't gone as far as reading it yet. That was, I think, an MMA blast that we got today, so.
Yeah.
That's it.
The expense side of it, and as you did the expense comparisons, was the wastewater treatment plant our portion of what we pay for that in those numbers?
So they are, and the dirty secret is no longer a secret. Now that the town of Harwich is responsible 100% for capital related to the elementary school, and we are 100% responsible for capital and septic at the middle school, that's all us. So where there used to be a pass-through, so to speak, 50% was the elementary school, which then would have been rolled up 76-24, and the budget, it's now all on the town of Harwich.
Well, that's not a capital cost yet, because we don't have to replace it. It's still maintenance and usage. How do they call that capital?
So then I'll use that as ammunition to further the discussion, because we have been talking about it.
Right now, it's just maintenance and usage. That's what they're paying for. That's not capital. So please add that to your list. How much money is in the revolving fund currently?
So there's a spending limit of $225,000. We had a balance that carried over for the fiscal year of $316, and I believe, if memory serves, we're hovering somewhere around $180,000.
Thank you. And then the last question is for Eric, and I can't not take the opportunity to talk about pickleball.
I knew someone was going to.
I thought we'd make it.
My favorite subject.
I bet. Do your numbers, Eric, are they the increased pickleball numbers to get to the numbers that you're at, or are those what you just signed on for?
That's what we are signed on for now.
Right now,
Yep.
okay.
Yep.
And then, looking at I don't have the detail on the cost, but I'm still trying to wrap my head around that school and that gymnasium getting a $20 bill for 5 days a week and now potentially 2 or 3 nights. I don't understand how we're coming up with those numbers.
Well, yeah, last year when I came before you, it was to request that we add on 2 more days. And it was requested at that time. At that time, we only were giving $10 per registration. It was requested we move it up to 20. So that's where we're at now.
I guess my real question is, what is that space worth, and what are we doing to go out to the market to see what somebody's willing to pay for that space?
Well, the space is worth, kind of like what I put in my report. I kind of theorized if the pickleball program wasn't a rec-sponsored program, and instead they rented the gym for the current rate, that's where it would probably bring in $13,000 to $15,000.
Okay.
For the late fall, winter season.
Okay, I'm not gonna beat up on pickleball too much tonight, but I do think that we are leaving a lot on the table by using that space that much for that little amount of money. And there are a fair amount of critics to that building.
Sure.
And we've been tasked with trying to make as much of it pay for itself as we possibly can, which thank you for your effort and Kara for her effort, because I can clearly see, based on this report, that there's a lot of opportunity there.
Sure. Yep.
So thank you very much.
Thank you.
I open it up to the public. Anyone want to?
Mr. Chairman, if I could, before you do that, I would be a world-class heel if I didn't ask if Ms. Mawini wanted to offer. Both she and Eric have done great work, not only in supporting me in the cost analysis, but really being creative on their narratives. That's why I had it in your packet separate from mine, so that their work could stand alone on their efforts.
I've just taken that you were sitting there because you didn't want to get up and talk.
No.
Go ahead.
Good
Introduce
evening.
yourself for the record.
Yes, so Karen Malini, Director of Cultural Affairs.
Great.
A few things just about the fee structure specifically pertaining to the auditorium. We cannot charge primo unless we do those upgrades. And the biggest
piece of the pie is that moving wall will increase our seating capacity to an additional 100 persons, which is, on a promoter side, spectacular. And I have been speaking to every promoter I know along the northeast border, and they are super excited and cannot wait, and are willing to pay the primo dollar that we go back to if we do those upgrades. So it's all there. We just have to figure out what's our best step forward with that. $100 now, yeah, people rent it, but it's not pretty. So that's our fees right now. The gym does rent for $100 for 3 hours. Everything that is our fee structure, and that is kind of how it's been holding. So people, yes, do rent, but you're making bare minimum dollar in that perspective.
Thank you. Any questions from the board, Larry?
No, thank you.
Don? Mary?
No, just fabulous job, Kara, in such a short time you've been with us.
Great.
Julie?
Thank you.
I agree. Great information and appreciate it. Thank
Excellent. One quick note, too, is that designation is hopefully set for January of 2023. It is pending the MCC's board meeting. So I will have updates when I know them, but I will certainly keep you all informed.
Great. And then on grants, there's 2 grants that we mentioned. Is there other grants in the background that?
Yes.
Okay.
So it's all, a lot of it opens, like right now is a big opening, so that's the biggest ones that we're going for, but then there's another round in the spring, and then like kind of May, June era, there's like a whole nother round. So continuously looking for those grants and trying to get whatever we can. I just have been talking with a lot of other arts groups and cultural centers and people who do this just to see what I might be missing. So people are sending me stuff daily just to review to see if we would qualify for it.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And great job, Eric, also.
Yes.
Yeah, but a lot for the board to digest, and a lot of questions that I'm sure will be asked now, and board ideas on how to move forward. So, anyone else in the public? Excellent. Thank you very much. Town administrator's report, if I'm not missing something else.
No, but if you thought I was going to be brief on this one, we have a lot of great news to put out there, and I've got some to share this evening. First of all, I'm going to talk lightly about it because I believe Selectman Anderson may, but we participated in the awards ceremony for one of our colleagues, Sheila House, so I'm going to leave the rest of that to Select Board Member Anderson, but it was a great event. In addition to that good feeling, we have 2 other new hires beyond the ones that you've approved tonight. So there is an Eldridge who is going back to the health department. However, she is not related to the former health director. Christy Eldridge has been appointed by me to replace Jen Clark in the Board of Health Department as the executive assistant for health. And we have an individual, Dominic, I'm going to say Yanuzzi, Don Yanuzzi for that. I told the staff I'd get it right because I'm part Italian and I blew it. However, Mr. Yanuzzi joins us as a dockhand for John Rendon. So we were able to fill those positions without a significant amount of lapse time, and we're very excited to have them come on board. There are some quick contracts for me to identify for you folks. First, working through the fire department, the radio replacement grant, which we had $333,500, but because of the grant offset, the total cost of the town was $30,485. That was done through fire department, as I've said. And let me just scroll through very quickly.
Through a grant receipt.
Say again?
Through a grant receipt, you're written by them.
Right, the grant offset was through the fire department. I believe that's it for contracts. I apologize. Last but not least, it would be me wishing everybody a very joyous, restful, and happy Thanksgiving. I know I'm looking forward to it myself. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I'll start with Mary on the Selectmen's report to further what Joe started talking about.
Yeah, the event Joe talked about was Philanthropy Day on Cape Cod, which is a pretty big event. And it's all the nonprofits are there, and we actually thought, Joe and I were plotting that it might be a good place for Kara to go next year and schmooze with people. But they give 4 awards at the lunchtime, and that's what Joe and I were invited for. And Sheila was, I believe it was the Volunteer of the Year award. Now, I know Sheila's work here, you know, as our Director of Youth Services, I had no idea the multitude of other things that she does as a volunteer. It was unbelievable. Each person, they would talk a little bit about and then run a video of several people talking about the person. It was just fabulous. And she probably made the best acceptance speech, and we have to get her, she read a paragraph that was very moving. So if you see Sheila, please congratulate her. It was a huge, huge honor.
Julie?
It's wonderful. She does great work for the town. It's amazing. She's doing so much more,
I know.
too. So, no, I would also just wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving. And Carolyn, I'm glad to see the blood pressure clinic is on Mondays before the meeting. So maybe I'll come, because afterwards I will.
Sometimes I need it after your meeting.
That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know it seems like another century ago, but we had the Veterans Day celebration, and it was really well attended. It's very heartening. I mean, there were a lot more people than the prior year, and it's really great to see the public coming out and with each other, celebrating our vets.
And thanks for doing that again.
It was a pleasure.
Larry?
Yeah, Don represented as well. Thank you, Don. No, I too just would hope everyone has a happy Thanksgiving dinner and don't eat too much.
Well, which are we supposed to do, Larry?
I don't guarantee that. I would just mention the dedication to the Murray Lane Habitat Project. I did go to that with Joe. Very moving and a lot of people there. But they dedicated each house and blessed each house. It was a fairly long event. I know the paper was there. Bill was there snapping a lot of pictures, but talk about empowering, watching those people get those homes and the amount of people that were there and the amount of people that recognized the need for that and did work on those homes. And then each individual homeowner, how many hours above and beyond the 250 hours that they had to put in. Some of them were in the 500s. But a very, very moving thing. If you've ever been to these housing dedications, it was really unreal. Don?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Further for that, this is kind of heartwarming. I mean, in another world and at other times, I'm also the president of HESH. And I just wanted, it wouldn't have been apparent that day, but this is for all of the things that aren't happening, one of the long-term HESH tenants graduated into home ownership as part of that dedication. That is exactly what the pathway is supposed to look like, is a hand up so you can actually move forward, and the sky's the limit if you get involved with programs that actually have a pathway to get past affordable housing and to get into the regular housing market. So we were kind of proud of that.
I remember that was quite a controversial project when it started, but, they dedicated, there's 11 adults and 11 kids moving into those houses, and many work in our community and go to school in our community.
I was 6'2" and had hair when I went in front of the ZBA in the first time.
Joe, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to add to what you've said, sometime after the parade and probably before the football games, unless you want to go on their website, but WBZ TV, Sarah Hughes was there. They've done an amazing vignette of the event. They've been running it. It's on their website, so they are going to play it again on Thanksgiving, but if you do want something uplifting in advance, I recommend you watch it. It's about 10 minutes, but it is very moving. And that was a great day for housing and a great day for Harwich, but just a day in a lifetime, a wonderful lifetime for those folks to see that. So it's a great video if you have a chance to watch it.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Moved and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 5-0. Happy Thanksgiving.
I don't want
Happy
to eat
Thanksgiving.
too much. Whose comment was that?
I'm gonna eat too much.
That's the whole point of the day.